that kind of podcast.
Well, with a little practice, you could learn to be.
There you go.
There we go. I was remarking upon how anemic the quotes page was for this movie, and our guest volunteered that he still has lines memorized from this movie from 25 years ago. So I pimped him out, as it were, the comedic term that probably should not be used anymore. I immediately regret saying, hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a blank check with Griffin and David. I don't know. I'm flipping it around.
Sure. Yeah, do it. Let's do it. Let's just introduce the movie. I mean, the podcast, whatever it is we do.
It's a podcast about filmographies which are made up of movies. So we can introduce both at the same time, David.
Of course.
Directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks, make whatever crazy passion projects they want, and sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce. Baby. This is a real bounce after a clear that led to a bigger clear. There was a lot of back and forth with this man at the beginning of his career. The man we're talking about, of course, is Sam Raimi.
Yes, that is right. We are talking about Sam Raimi. The podcast is called
Podcast Me to Hell.
And the movie we're talking about,
his second film, his second proper. Do you want to acknowledge this here? Because people have been angry.
People were like, are you going to talk about that movie, It's Murder, which was like a full-length movie. It was never really released.
Yeah.
But his Super 8 movie. And the answer was like, no, we're not. Sorry. I mean, I think it is, you can watch it, right? Like, is it like an extra on a DVD or something? Like, is it kicking around somewhere?
Because there's this sort of question of like, Edgar Wright has that movie, A Fistful of Fingers.
That one counts. That one really came out as much as he is, I think, a little embarrassed by it. Like, that did have a release.
He said it came out in literally one theater.
Well, you know.
But it still is. Right.
You know, has a poster and all. Anyway, look, Crimewave is Sam Raimi's second movie, really, I would say.
Yeah, I'm seeing It's Murder split into parts in a very low transfer on Daily Motion.
That's what I saw, so I was kind of like, yeah, thank God we didn't do that. This movie is called Crimewave. Do you want to know something, Griff?
I want to know everything, David.
Okay, well, I don't know if I can do that, but this movie came out in America. It was sort of sprinkled around, had like a little European release or whatever. But
Campbell's famous line was, "This movie wasn't released; it escaped."
Right. But its U.S. release was the day after my birth, the 25th of April, 1986. Just isn't that funny to think? One day into my life, maybe my parents had the New York Times delivered, and there was like a little ad for Crimewave in there or something, and they were like, yeah, that looks bad.
Yeah, it is funny. It is funny to imagine one day after your birth, your parents frantically calling anyone they trusted to watch you so they could rush out to theaters to see Crimewave.
This guy, I mean, he understands how to use the camera. Like, this has got to be good, right?
Yes. A very bizarre film that is largely forgotten, in part because the people involved in it have sort of largely disowned it. I feel like Bruce Campbell's the only one who will still speak on the record about this movie. And the three other main creative forces, four if we include Rob Tapper here, still seem to be so traumatized by this production that they never even want to acknowledge it. And that's the thing that is wildest about this movie. The thing that for me as a young Sam Raimi fan, I just went like, what are you talking about? How does this exist? And how does no one talk about it? It is impossible that it's as bad as you're saying it is, because this is a movie directed by Sam Raimi and written by the Coen Brothers.
Sounds amazing.
Right. In the time between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 for Raimi, and in between Blood Simple and Raising Arizona for the Coens. And you're just like, how could those three guys together in that moment with that momentum do something that is unwatchable?
Do you think this movie is unwatchable?
I don't.
No.
I don't. I think it's a difficult film to watch.
What's hard about it?
It is like, I mean, I want to bring our guest in because
bring our guest in.
I made him do the quote at the beginning, but our guest, first of all, primary credit, a dear friend. Number one credit with a bullet.
Top of the resume, dear friend of Griffin Newman.
That's the best one.
He's a dear friend, but he's also a fine actor, musician in his own right. And recently, I don't know if you've experienced this, David, but I feel like maybe it was a pandemic thing, or maybe it was just that the show's been going on long enough. I feel like in the last 18 months, I've had a number of close friends be like, I finally started listening to your podcast.
No, for sure. I mean, the weird thing of, remember those first couple months in the pandemic where the take was podcasts are in trouble, no one's commuting. And then suddenly it became, actually everyone's kind of catching up on podcasts because they're bored. And then yes, I did get a lot of I've been listening to Blank Check, having a good time, and that's nice.
So this dear friend of mine, whenever it was 18 months ago, started texting me about that he was now listening to the show. And that when I told him we were doing Sam Raimi, he said, I'm just going to put out there Bruce Campbell and his work in Sam Raimi movies is pretty much the thing that made me become an actor. If there's any opening you have for me to talk about this. And I asked him about Crimewave and your line, Brendan, if I can quote it directly.
Yes.
I said, have you ever seen Crimewave? And Brendan, your response was, the old Raimi film? Yes. Paid a ridiculous amount of money for the back-ordered VHS circa 1994 while working at Blockbuster. Yeah, I love that slapsticky mess.
I do.
I think that's fair.
And then your text was, or did you mean another one? Our guest today is Brendan Hines.
Hi.
From a little Amazon series called The Tick. Locke and Key.
Yeah.
The Middleman. Lie to Me. What other credits do we want to put in there, Brendan?
We don't want to put any other credits in after Dear Friend.
Okay. Dear Friend's the most important one.
Yeah. As you can see, I was waiting for that text from you and I was just ready to jump at the opportunity to talk about it. I think actually, now that I think about it, it may have actually been closer to 1993. I don't want to lead you astray.
Wow.
I think it was 1993.
Okay. Wow. The point here is, it sounds like much like what I was talking about. You hear about this movie existing and you go, how is that possible? And how is that not readily watchable?
Yeah. Well, I came to a lot of the Raimi stuff the same way you did too, like going to comic book stores, and I did a play with this guy in high school, and he turned me on to a lot of the stuff that first of all, he turned me on to Evil Dead 2 was the first. Actually, that's not true. The first Raimi film I saw was Darkman.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the theater, because I was going to this comic book store called Cards, Comics, and Collectibles in Reisterstown, Maryland.
Cool.
I believe it's still there. And I was I was always going in there and was too shy to talk to anybody, but I would just go in and kind of soak up the vibe. And they had a poster for Darkman, and I thought, that's the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. And I still think that. And got my parents to allow me to go see this film. And that was the first Raimi film I ever saw. And I knew that it was made by someone great and made in a way that was unique for those sorts of movies.
Yeah, that's a movie where, like, if you see that poster as a kid, you go, oh, this looks cool. And if you watch that movie, you go, why is this different from other movies?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it was one of the first things where I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to have a directorial stamp on something, or an authorial take on something. I wasn't thinking in terms of the word auteur, but like that is what I was thinking. That is what I was finally becoming hip to at that point. And then this guy I did a play with introduced me to Evil Dead 2, which was the greatest movie I had ever seen at that point in my life. And it just spoke to where I was at that time in my life, and all the things that I thought were hilarious, and the things that and the gore felt, transgressive, but also funny. And then I was working at Blockbuster. I was assistant manager.
Also cool.
Blockbuster Video, Owings Mills. This is Brendan speaking. Can I help you?
Yep.
And I had access to this massive, Bible, this VHS Bible that we had at Blockbuster. No IMDb or anything at this point. So I would just go through it looking for actors that I loved. And at that point, Bruce Campbell was, top of the list. And I saw Crimewave, and I cross-referenced it, realized that it was directed by Sam Raimi. And just like you're saying, I couldn't believe that no one had brought that up.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead and even Darkman, but no one had ever mentioned Crimewave. So I go onto the the database at Blockbuster, not available, of course.
Right.
But back then you could there was always like a copy that was just available if you wanted to back order it for 90 bucks, $100. It felt like more money than even existed in the world at that point. And anyway, I ordered it through the offices of Blockbuster Video and paid for it myself.
That's how intent you were on seeing Crimewave.
Yeah, I mean, I was just I was an obsessive. I also it reminded me, thinking about watching Crimewave and then just thinking about talking about it. I was reminded, I went so deep down. I went into all of the Raimi collaborators, Josh Becker,
Mhm.
who did this thing called Lunatics: A Love Story with Ted Raimi, and because Bruce Campbell's in that, and this thing called Sundown: The Vampire in Retreat. I don't know if you've seen this movie.
No.
It was directed by Anthony Hickox, who did the Waxwork movies,
Holy
which
shit.
Campbell is also in.
I'm looking. Sorry, I mean, Lunatics: A Love Story. I'm seeing Ted Raimi as the star. He's wearing a tinfoil suit on the poster.
Yeah.
Okay, this is cool.
It's similar to Crimewave in the sort of nebbishy, dorky guy trying to get the girl, that
Right.
old chestnut. But Sundown was the one where I was just like, oh God, nobody knows about this movie. And it's got all the coolest people in the world in it. I mean, Carradine is in it, David Carradine is in it, and Bruce Campbell plays Van Helsing.
Oh, here it is. Yeah. Damn. These video covers are really fun.
I had
gotta
them
say.
all on my shelf and I watched them repeatedly.
M. Emmett Walsh playing a character called Mort Bisbee. That's pretty good.
That's when I started to really make those connections, between, the cinematic universe of Raimi and the Coens, overlapping so much, with the people they used and the character names. And, this movie starts off at the Hudsucker prison, and you just start to see that. And then over the years, when then you're getting into, you being me, is getting into the Coen Brothers. And I'm picking up on all of these references that I don't think anybody else is noticing. So it makes me feel very special, but also makes me feel very protective of these things. I wasn't one of the ones who wanted to share them with everybody. I wanted to keep them.
Did you ever see, I just love this title, Thou Shalt Not Kill ... Except,
Yes.
Which is another Josh Becker, written with Bruce Campbell and Scott Spiegel, of course, who wrote Evil Dead 2. And starring Sam and Ted Raimi, as Sam Raimi plays a cult leader in this movie.
Yeah, that one I could not find a copy of.
Well, according to Wikipedia, some of the fans of the film hail it as one of the great works in American filmography.
Wow.
No, nothing cited there for
sure.
But that's crazy. What you're describing too, when you say oh, I didn't really want to share it, but right, let's before the internet, it's just some person at a video store being like, hey, check this out, right? That's the only. Here, I'm going to make this picture of Sam Raimi as a Charles Manson figure my background one second.
But it was that thing where record stores, video stores, and comic book stores had to function as an analog version of the internet, right? Where you heard about things from people, where people downloaded trivia into your brain, and where you could maybe exchange or acquire these things. That is a look. We're looking at Sam Raimi in Thou Shalt Not Kill. This is the top except, sorry. I was just taking a long pause. The top trivia fact on Thou Shalt Not Kill except is the movie was mostly shot in the garage and on the lawn of the house where Bruce Campbell grew up.
Gotta go back home.
And that's the other thing I used to do. My friends and I, if we had a snow day, I mean, everyone did this, but we would, make these camcorder films, and I would replicate entire sequences from Sam Raimi films with the camcorder, and with one or two friends. I mean, the only friends I had, guys, one or two.
I don't want to embarrass you, Brandon, but I feel like I just need to state this up front because this is an audio medium.
Okay.
You're an incredibly handsome, tall, well-built, and charming man.
Wow.
And when
I'm
you
just putting it out there.
you hate it when people say this, but when you were telling me how like important and impactful Campbell and the Raimi films were for you growing up, I was like, that makes a ton of sense. And even when I said to David, David went like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. Because you do just sort of have that Bruce Campbell spirit where it's like, you genuinely are just such a dork for these things, despite the fact that perhaps from outside perception, you do not seem like the person who would be that kind of a dork for these things. And you're just very like passionate and collaborative and knowledgeable about all of this. I like on The Tick, you played a very Bruce Campbell-y part.
Mm-hmm.
And you seem to really relish that. And when I hear you tell me about frustrations you have in your acting career, they are often you getting handed sort of like generic dude roles.
Yeah.
When people want you to play like the nice guy version of the thing rather than the smug asshole version of the thing.
Yeah, or the thing with any sense of, or with the thing that has any unique spin on it whatsoever, you know?
Right.
Doesn't necessarily have to be smug, but just something other than, you know, nice and well lit, you know?
Right. I feel that thing shared between you and Bruce Campbell of just the like, I want to use the body I'm in a subversive way
Mm-hmm.
rather than just get plugged into a frame.
I always found when I was watching, because I would, you know, I would watch any film if I knew Bruce Campbell had even the smallest part. I mean, it's fair to say I had a massive crush on the guy. And I would get annoyed when they cast him as just the generic good-looking guy who just shows up for like 5 lines and then walks away. You know, and they didn't let him. You could see also when they're telling him to turn it down, when they're telling him to bury that natural thing he has, not just the cockiness, not just the humor, but just the, I mean, like he's a collaborator and he could bring so much to anything, I think.
Absolutely. It's not to front load here, but it's one of the wildest things like digging into the history of this movie was they wrote this as a vehicle for him. They wanted him to play the Reed Birney part. They made him screen test because for the first time they're working with like other producers and financiers, and we'll dig into the deeper version of all of this. But all the money people said like Bruce Campbell cannot be the lead of this movie. They take the role of Ronaldo the Heel, which was smaller, and expand it so that his character runs throughout the entire length of the movie, specifically so that not only he could have a big enough role in the film, but also they were like, we need to convince them to pay Bruce to be here for run of production because they did not understand like he is the third collaborator.
Right. He's alchemical here. Right.
Yes, but also he's going to produce shit. He's going to shoot second unit. He's going to be like talent coordinator.
Yes.
He's going to do all this fucking
He's
shit.
editing on the fly too, I think.
Right. And they wouldn't pay to let him work or stay there during post-production. They were like, the movie's done. He's an actor. He's wrapped. You don't need him anymore. And it was like a big fight. It's
weird that they did not gravitate to Bruce Campbell, who is handsome and charming. And I do not say that I mean, no offense to Reed Birney, who obviously has gone on to have a great career and gave one of the most moving theater performances I ever saw in Circle Mirror Transformation. And obviously he was, you know, he's a working actor. He's doing great. But why did they then like bring in this basically unknown guy and go like, well, this is the guy? Like, that's what I don't really understand.
I feel the same way. I'm always surprised when I read that they didn't want Campbell. Maybe they just found maybe he couldn't be the loser. Maybe they felt like he couldn't be the loser. It's insane.
Creatively, that's the only version of that decision that makes sense to me. But there is the thing, Connor Ratliff, friend of the show, and his Dead Eyes podcast, often talks about when he's talking to people about like theories on why he got fired from Band of Brothers. That part of it was like casting made this decision without Tom Hanks, the director of the episode. And when the director comes in, maybe they want to exert their control.
Right. Or they think there's something wrong. Right. And they're like, well, this can be the fix or what. I don't know.
But not even that, David. I mean, that's a fair enough thing. But I also think sometimes when people get involved at that kind of level and they're like, I need to think that I'm more valuable than just being the person who writes the check.
I have to put my foot down somewhere or something. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
And
yeah,
on
yeah,
paper, you go, if this guy's saying, look, here's my friend who I made home movies with in our backyards, and he's my leading man, you go like, red alert, red alert, red alert, have to hire a real actor. But then if you make this guy do a screen test and he's Bruce Campbell and he looks like this and he's this good and this funny, I cannot imagine him going like, well, this guy's unusable. He is fundamentally not a leading man.
I think you're right, and they also it's the control thing too. Reed Birney they can pluck out of, I assume, obscurity at this
Yes.
point, and he will
In
be
theater.
so grateful. Theater,
Yeah,
right?
a
But
well
probably first big
respected theater actor.
leading,
Yes.
yeah, for sure, but a leading role in a big budget film. And then he will be just grateful, and he'll do the job. He'll be a jobber. But Campbell will be collaborating with, and as the producers will be seeing it, conspiring with
Right.
Raimi.
Yes. Yeah. I mean that makes a lot of sense that you don't want the chickens running the hen house or what, right? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, especially because it's just like Evil Dead is such an amazing calling card movie. You're in this catch-22 where, like, if you're the people writing the checks for this movie, you go, holy shit, these guys did what? On what budget? They pulled that off. That's impressive. They know what they're doing. But simultaneously, you're probably scared where you're like, they did that all on their own. There was no oversight. I'm not going to be able to control them at all. If you let all three of them retain their key creative positions, then we're not going to be able to get a word in edgewise. Versus if you force a different leading man in there, how much can we sort of like elbow out Bruce Campbell?
Well, we'll talk about the strange production of this film in a sec.
Mhm.
But I do just want to get on the record Ben Hosley, our producer's opinion of this film.
10 stars.
Because when I was watching it, it did occur to me, I was like, I think Ben will appreciate the energy of this film, if nothing else. And I log on this afternoon, and Ben proved me right.
I give it 10 bonks, 4 like clanks, and a couple of for good measures.
Couple has right. That makes sense. Yes, it's about crime. As you pointed out, Griffin, there's a wave. Ben loves water.
There's a wave. Ben loves water.
And it's just a big old Looney Tune of a movie. Whether or not Sam Raimi was happy with the end result, it's just jumping from here to there, like do the whole time, like it never lets up.
Yeah, see, David, I mean, you recently logged this on Letterboxd as 2.5 stars, and your review was not the most coherent movie I've ever seen.
Not the most.
Now, I agree with that, but I probably give it 3 stars.
Yeah, maybe I'm being a little rude.
It's not the most incoherent movie I've ever seen.
It's not. It's not.
No.
It's absolutely not. And I have
But
to
I wouldn't say it's in the middle of incoherence and coherence.
No, I agree with you. But it is just like I am fascinated. It's hard to even imagine what the sort of undisturbed version of this movie would look like, right? Like you read about, there were multiple steps in this. The production itself was like a nightmare. Reading the anecdotes about the production of this movie, which we will get into, I'm like, this sounds as intense as like The Hurt Locker, like the most extreme Apocalypse Now, like the most chaotic shoots of all time.
Right. Like they're in the jungle somewhere, except they're
Right.
not. They're like in Detroit or whatever.
Right. You're like, how did this go this wrong? But then, control is wrestled away during post-production. They force reshoots, edits. They make him hire a new composer, all these sorts of things. But Raimi makes his movies so deliberately that it's not like you can easily recut them and take the Raimi DNA out of them.
Right.
So you don't watch this movie, it doesn't feel like other movies we've covered before that were sort of pulled away from directors where you're like, it's just lost in here. I don't know what it is. And the energy of this thing is just so fucking infectious.
I am now just looking at my Letterboxd review, which you reminded me of, and the comments are very indicative, I guess, of how polarizing Crimewave is. Like, it's wacky, but not in a fun way. I think it's wacky in a fun way. Couldn't finish it. David, please reconsider. 1.5 stars too many, King, or really 2 stars too little. It's not good, and I hope the writers never work again. I think that's a joke about the Coen Brothers.
Yeah.
It's extremely bad. I was kind of blown away by this movie. Just love and hate
Yes.
doing battle. This movie provokes a reaction, that if nothing else.
I feel that within me, I feel those two sides at war within me. Of the when I watched this movie, I was reminded of how I felt when I watched it as a kid, because there's so much of it that I love. So many like shots that work, so many set pieces that are just oversized, shouldn't work, and yet kind of do. Like even when she's dangling out the window and the flower pot is falling, and then he catches the pot and then the soil comes out. Like little bits like that, which are very Coen Brothers-y too. That's for me, the big thing that I hated when I was watching this as a kid was the jokes that don't work.
Mm.
The big broad slapsticky Three Stooges stuff that doesn't work. I get mad at that, because this movie could have been fucking perfect. Yeah, this movie could have been perfect. And for me, the biggest thing, I think this movie for you, David, goes from a 2.5. Well, I'm not gonna presume to speak for you.
No,
for me, this movie would go to a 5 boinks on the head.
Yeah.
If
Huge.
you take the fucking ADR of what's his name, Crush,
the Paul L. Smith character.
The Paul
right?
L. Smith. Yeah. If you take that ADR out with whoever, there's a wrestler or something that they
yes.
that they
the
use.
ADR is tough. It's not the most seamless. Yeah,
it's egregious too. Like it's in all these places where they clearly are just like adding it in post, where he's adding like, "Oh, what do you think you're doing here and there?" And "Oh, I'll show you here and there." It's like, okay, guys, just let it breathe for 1 second. And that is where you start to. That's where I think I can see the handprints of the studio and these producers, just trying to fill every single fucking hole.
Well, and was the whole wraparound a mandated reshoot? The electric chair. I was reading they made them reshoot bookends.
Oh, don't know.
Because the movie was incomprehensible to people, or at least they thought it was.
That makes sense. I mean, it is pretty
incomprehensible.
To
people,
and it's pretty expository with those bookends.
But I agree with you, Brendan, that at moments I'm watching this movie and thinking, wait, is this my favorite movie of all time? Is this the most perfect movie I've ever seen? And then the next scene will happen and I'll like drift a little bit, right?
Right. It's sort of weird how you can zone out watching a very, very manic movie. Because, sometimes you're like, this is such a cleverly executed sequence. This is so visually interesting. And then other times you're kind of like, I lost it. What's going on? Where are we? Like, who is this?
And all 3 Evil Dead movies are movies where things just stack on top of each other in this way, right? Where it's like, instead of taking an hour for the crazy shit to happen and it happens for 20 minutes and then there's a resolution, it's like, what if the shit happens for 70 out of 85 minutes? But those movies have the benefit of being kind of focused in the stories they're telling.
Mm-hmm.
Army of Darkness, I guess, a little bit less so. And then I think, because this and Hudsucker are sort of written around the same time. They're written in concert with each other, and it's only when the Coens are coming off of Barton Fink and have that success that they're able to get Hudsucker made. So who knows what work is done further on the script between then and now, and probably a lot of work done from the lessons they learned on working Crimewave. But like Hudsucker, which I love and I think is a masterpiece, is a movie where they figure out the emotional spine of the thing. And it's weird because when that movie came out, all the reviews are like, the Coen Brothers are so cynical. They think all these characters are fucking idiots. The movie's so mean-spirited. And I think that movie is like incredibly sincere and earnest. And I think they have a lot of love for this big like galoof at the center. Whereas this movie, you kind of feel like all 3 of them are like, what if we make a movie where everyone's an idiot? And that's funny. Like, it is funny. But I do think they realized a decade later, like, it helps if you have a couple characters at the center that you can actually kind of care about.
Yeah, you want to root for something, I guess, if you're going to make a real movie. And Crimewave feels like something that escaped from a film canister, like to paraphrase Bruce Campbell, right? Like, it's like, so, some guy was delivering a bunch of movies to a theater, and then there's one like case that's like sort of clattering around, and the guy's like, what's that one? And he's like, Oh no, you wouldn't want to deal with that one. No. I was just hauling that off to the dump. And the guy's like, oh no, come on. He knocks it over, and then the film escapes. You know, I'm
Black
imagining a whole
smoke
scenario.
seeps out.
Right,
Yeah. David.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to make right in this ad read.
Okay.
We had a new sponsor a couple weeks ago. I talked about how much I like the product, and then I saw people on the Reddit and Twitter saying, I don't understand. The competitive advantage of this product is that it comes in a bag. That's the only thing it has going for it, is that it comes in a bag. I was so excited by the fact that Catalina Crunch comes in a Ziploc bag.
Yes.
A resealable bag. I spotlighted that so much because I like eating cereal in bed dry without milk, that people just got so confused by my freak behavior and my laziness that I feel like I didn't fully sell what I like about Catalina Crunch.
Right. It became a little too much of a Griff spotlight and not enough of a Catalina, like a Griff lifestyle thing versus a Catalina Crunch ad.
And as we know, anytime I talk about my lifestyle, people get confused. It detracts for whatever ostensibly is at hand.
Yeah. Well, look, it's good that you like eating Catalina Crunch at home and that it is so comforting and easy to, break off a chunk.
But that's not the important part, David. The thing I want to focus on today is the fact that Catalina Crunch tastes great and is zero sugar, keto friendly, and low carb.
That's keto, Griffin. That's keto.
Well, here's another a classic confusing thing about my lifestyle, I would say. They got great flavors. I had chocolate banana, chocolate peanut butter. There's like a graham cracker flavor, variety packs, so you can give them all a try. I eat them dry out of the bag like a lunatic, but I'm not going to talk about that more. I don't want to distract people.
I'm quite fond. I don't mind eating it with milk. I'm quite fond of with yogurt just because it gets a little less soggy. That's sort of, I'm a yogurt and granola guy. Catalina Crunch is good for that. Very delicious. Most zero sugar food doesn't taste delicious.
Yeah.
But Catalina Crunch does, even though it's got, no sugar and it's low carb, and it's got 11 grams of plant-based protein and 9 grams of fiber per serving. Wow.
Jeez Louise. I mean, they have a cinnamon toast flavor, a cinnamon toast Catalina Crunch. And I'm not going to draw the line directly, but I will say it tastes as good as another similar sounding cereal, and it causes a lot less of a mess, if you catch my drift. A notoriously yummy cereal that leaves a lot of residue. You know what I'm talking about?
I actually don't, but you're going to tell me off mic. It'll be like one of those classic podcast moments where we have celebrity gossip.
Cinnamon toast Catalina Crunch.
I see what you're saying. Well, they've got 8 crave-worthy flavors, including cinnamon toast. They got dark chocolate. They got creamy chocolate peanut butter. If you're not sure which to try first, get a variety pack, okay?
I've been working through them. I think I've tried like 5 different flavors now. I've gone back from the original free gratis package they sent us, and I bought more.
There you go. It's gluten-free and grain-free. So if you got those allergens to worry about, it's non-GMO, only real clean ingredients. There's nothing artificial. So I guess I should call to action.
You should call to action. I think it's mandatory, and you must read verbatim.
See why Catalina Crunch cereal is the fastest growing cereal brand in America. Just go to catalinacrunch.com/check for 15% off your first order plus free shipping. That's catalinacrunch.com/check. Not sure which flavor to start with? Try a variety pack and check out their delicious cookies and snack mixes while you're at it. Again, that's catalinacrunch.com/check for 15% off your first order plus free shipping.
And I do want to remind everyone that it comes in a resealable bag that you can eat in bed dry without milk.
Okay, let me give you some context about Crimewave. Yeah, Sam Raimi makes The Evil Dead, famously long, torturous shoot, no money, back in Tennessee. He goes to Michigan, and then he goes to New York looking for post-production, and Edna Paul edits that movie, and she's got a young assistant named Joel Coen, and Joel is watching Evil Dead get assembled, and he's like, this guy is talented. Like that's they've got these two Midwestern boys bond over this.
Right. Joel sort of immediately recognizes like this is real shit. Like he's watching this footage. He bonds with them. And she says to Raimi, you should read the scripts that the Coen brothers write. And Raimi's like, there's 2 of them? They're like, yeah, the second one works as a statistical accountant at Macy's.
Yep.
And Raimi's reaction is like, look, I think Joel's a nice guy. I'm not going to read these fucking scripts. That sounds like a disaster.
Right. He's like, oh God, this is going to be embarrassing. And then he reads, I think, Blood Simple.
Yeah, correct.
Which I think is what they had written with the thinking of like, that'll be our calling card movie. It's small, right? Like, and he's like, oh shit, this is, these guys know how to write scripts. That's the quote.
He's like, this is like a Hitchcock level script. Like, this is an
It's a good
actual
script.
perfect screenplay. Yeah.
There's not much detail that JJ could find about the writing of Crimewave
because they hate talking about it.
They don't want to talk about it. It is obviously they're working on Hudsucker at the same time, at least some early version of Hudsucker. And obviously they use the word Hudsucker in Crimewave, right? Like it's sort of, it's on their minds. And it was called Relentless, then it was called the XYZ Murders. No one could ever come up with a good title for this movie. Crimewave is not a good title, but it's fine. Like it's
It's kind of the best of the options they had.
I agree, and yet it was forced on them, right? Yeah.
XYZ Murders, I read it was that one of the producers said you'll have an easier time selling this movie if there's an X or murder in the title. Like that always tracks really well. And they were like, we can put both in the title.
So they get money from Embassy Pictures, classic sort of low budget. They did Scanners, they did Escape from New York, they did The Fog. They give him a little money basically off the back of Evil Dead and Norman Lear. Wait, Norman Lear?
Yeah, this is what's wild, David. So
I think he's the one who suggested Crimewave as the title.
Right. Shit.
Robert Raimi was the head of Avco Embassy. He sells it to Norman Lear. He goes to take over. He becomes the head of production at Universal, I think, and is the guy who like greenlights E.T. and shit. And Norman Lear buys Avco Embassy for $20 million, chops the Avco off the top of the name. His two big things are kind of getting Rob Reiner's career off the ground in that he supports This Is Spinal Tap and Princess Bride. And then within 4 years, the company is sold to Coca-Cola and folded into bigger Sony. So there's this 4-year run where Norman Lear's in charge. He makes two like totemic Rob Reiner movies. And this is one of the weird other experiments in that time.
This is also why Louise Lasser is in it, I think, because of Norman Lear, because he produced Mary Hartman.
Broken Hearts and Noses. That's another suggested title. Terrible title. Crimewave is finally decided upon. And obviously, as we said, Bruce Campbell was intended to be the star, and Embassy Pictures would not bite.
Mm-hmm.
Reed Birney, he's good. I like Reed Birney.
Yeah,
we pro Reed Birney. He makes sense for this movie.
Yeah, I always like him, and he is good in this. And you do wonder if Bruce is a little too cool to play the guy. I mean, I obviously think he would have done it well, but Reed Birney is like so squirrely in this. And Bruce, you would have had the added level in a movie that's already really manic of a guy with matinee idol looks pretending to play a nerd.
Right.
I will tell you that Cherie J. Wilson, who plays Nancy in this movie, this is her first movie. She'd actually been cut out of Tootsie, but my thing that I like is when she was cast, she told Sam Raimi, I don't really like horror movies. I haven't seen your horror movie. And he was like, don't watch it. It's going to freak you out. I don't want you to dislike me, basically.
You'll quit the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want you to think less of me.
She went on to do 200 episodes, basically, of Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah, and
Did you
Dallas
know this?
as well.
She was on Dallas as well, right? But like that's damn. She was a lead on Walker, Texas Ranger. That's it's money in the bank.
That's money. Yeah.
Louise Lasser obviously specifically wanted to work with Sam Raimi. She loved Evil Dead. She had worked with Lear on Mary Hartman, and she is great in this movie. I think she is so much fun. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Have you guys seen this movie Blood Rage?
No, I don't think so.
There's a movie that she did, I think around this time, maybe a couple of years earlier, about a pair of twins, one of whom is a serial killer and the other is not. And she's the mom. And it's basically the same performance. She looks exactly the same. Her makeup is the same. Her wardrobe is the same. And she has a ton of scenes just to herself on the phone. I highly recommend people watch Blood Rage because it's a really good slasher film, but also it has these long scenes of Louise Lasser just calling the cops. And I swear these scenes are like 8 minutes long with her on the phone, having a meltdown. There's no cutaway. And it's crazy. It's batshit crazy stuff. And I don't know apparently she had some addiction issues, according to Bruce Campbell.
She's had a long, wild life, Louise Lasser.
And a lot of the thing with her, Mary Hartman was a Norman Lear doing a satire of soap operas that ran at the same schedule as soap operas. So it was 325 episodes. They did 5 episodes a week. It was this incredibly ambitious thing. And it was sort of an American housewife having like a mental breakdown in the style of a soap opera. And then she hosted SNL.
Right. Very famous SNL story. Right.
Right. And her monologue was her having like a Mary Hartman-esque breakdown.
Right.
And the cast having to coax her out of the dressing room and whatever. And there are all these questions as to whether like, because she was apparently like the first person banned from coming back to the show.
Right. Supposedly it was like, it's a bit, but also they were like, but she was actually that difficult.
Right.
And Michael O'Donoghue, a famously chill person, called her clinically berserk.
Right.
And whatever. But then she later said like Chevy Chase sucked, which also seems true. Look, the whole thing is everyone was doing 4 billion pounds of cocaine a second. And they were all probably the most insufferable people in the world. As much as every SNL oral history is like, man, we were inventing comedy. It was the comedy lab back there. And I'm like, you guys were all just out of your minds. Is what was
absolutely
happening.
No. I think because even to the Blood Rage point, like Louise Lasser is fascinating because she was someone who was so good at playing women on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and then some of the people who work with her are like, she was impossible. She was on the verge of a nervous breakdown the entire time.
Yeah, and they just have to point the camera at her, and they get that, and then they turn it off, and she's still that.
But like an incredibly effective performer.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
she's great. I mean, the scene with the when she's running down the hallway, the doors, in Crimewave.
Yeah. Yes.
Am I skipping ahead?
No, that's kind of the most perverse sequence of the movie.
Skip ahead in Crimewave. There's not like a narrative thread that we're picking up and dropping.
Right. That's true. So the doors, the door ballet. Like, I don't know who else commits as heavily to that as Louise Lasser, or really the whole thing in the apartment when Crush is chasing her around. Apparently, according to Bruce Campbell, she applied her own makeup.
This is the whole thing, right? She fired her makeup person and said she didn't know what she was doing. I know how to do my own makeup, and showed up with like a version of what we see in this movie, but 40% more extreme. Right. And part of their job every day was to like let her do her own makeup and then take it down. But I think the amount of like eyeshadow and lipstick and rouge on her face was not part of Raimi's design. That was a compromise.
But if you see Blood Rage, you'll see that it's the same thing.
Yes.
And in fact, I don't think anyone took it down the 40%. I think they just
they added more.
Obviously, she's a real name at this point, so I get that
she's the biggest name they have.
Right. You would tolerate more unusual behavior from her, but it is again funny where they're like, we're not putting up with this Bruce Campbell who does lots of work and helps out on the set. You can't cast him. We see through your lies. Anyway, here's Louise Lasser. Don't talk to her. don't look her in the eyes. Like,
right. Bruce Campbell's like carrying around apple boxes, and they're like, this fucking guy trying to disrupt our production.
Can I get you a cup of coffee? Get the fuck out of here, asshole.
Fucking asshole, you bottleneck. There's this Louise Lasser quote here that's very nice. I mean, you were sort of alluding to this, David. But she said, the appeal to me was not in the role. The appeal was that it was so clear to me that it was a director's picture. I was willing to put myself in his hands. I like to be around people like that. And then seemed to only be a hassle and a nightmare for them after that. But you're talking about how hard she committed to like that doorway sequence, which is the type of Raimi thing that must be so impossibly complicated to shoot that it is so wearing on an actor. And to her credit, she does fucking go for it so goddamn hard.
Yes, she does, which is good, which is right. Exactly. Like that is the upside. You're getting someone who has genuine chaotic energy on screen, and that works for this film very, very well. Brian James, Another who plays Arthur, another erratic person, Bruce Campbell, said that he tore his hotel room to shreds, and said that the
Sick.
ghost of his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend was in the light fixtures.
I love this story so much.
It's
But
so
it's not
good.
even a story. I love that sentence so much. I
It's a
don't
great
know
sentence.
anything beyond it. But the implication,
Ghost of my girlfriend's ex-boyfriend was in the
I love
light
the
fixtures.
implication is that maybe he killed his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend.
Right. This is okay. There's two. Like, is it one? Right. He's haunted by something, or two? Is he having sex with his girlfriend in his hotel room, and maybe a light turns on or off, and he's like, "It's your ex-boyfriend."
Oh, yes.
I'm throwing this lamp out the window.
That's what I view. I view it almost as like he's afraid of the competition. That it's not like I murdered this guy and now he's coming back for me. It's like, fuck, if he's back in ghost form, I might not stand a chance.
Well, I tell you, I guess maybe the reason I felt it was the former was because of it's Brian James,
Oh, sure.
the guy who
Yes.
like haunted me as a kid. Every time I would look at a VHS tape cover in the video store that had him on it, I would just be like, no, I'm not going anywhere near that movie.
Right. He's a guy you hire for just immediate physical intensity.
I think a lot of people probably know him best from Blade Runner, right? He's,
48
but he's
hours.
great in 48 Hours. Great in The Fifth Element. Great,
Flesh and
great in a lot
Blood.
of stuff. Red
Yeah.
Heat. Yeah.
Wasn't he in Shocker, the guy who gets electrocuted but then comes back to life? Is that a Wes Craven film?
That is a Wes Craven film. It's not Brian James though. Who is it?
He's
Who
in
played-
Future Shock?
Yeah, it's something about shock electricity. I'm getting confused.
Yeah, it's Michael Murphy who's in Shock.
Right. But Michael Murphy, he's not right. Mitch Pileggi is the man who has been
Oh, he
shocked.
is the shocky. Yeah.
Right. Michael Murphy is like the cop or whatever. Yeah. He was in Cabin Boy. I mean, he had a very, very odd career and was a very intense, frightening man. And then Paul L. Smith, there's like I'm not seeing specifics on it, and I dug a little deeper, but they said like part of why they redubbed all of his dialogue was because he was, quote, not the most collaborative, that they had a very hard time getting stuff out of him. Paul L. Smith, at this point, is probably best known for playing Bluto in Popeye, which is incredibly funny because the style of the dubbing in this movie feels like something out of a Popeye cartoon.
100%. He can only be dubbed.
Right, where Bluto would just like have his teeth gritted at all times in the old cartoons. His lips would never move, and then words would just come out. That felt very disconnected from his body.
I'll bet he wouldn't do the cartoon voices. Brian James commits to the cartoon voice.
Yes.
Right.
And I bet Raimi, this is just conjecture, but I bet Raimi wanted him to do a similarly goofy voice and he wouldn't do
He
it.
did a
'cause
tough
he's-
guy voice
he's
or
a
whatever.
Tough guy.
Right. Yeah.
But then they dubbed him with a tough guy voice, so maybe I'm crazy.
But they dubbed him with a tough guy doing a cartoon voice. Like when I heard his voice, I was like, who did they get to do this? Was it like, was this an early Tom Kenny job? Was this like, you imagine they got a cartoon guy to do the voiceover and they're like, no, they hired a professional wrestler to do a silly voice.
Frances McDormand plays a silent nun in this movie along with Bridget
Yes.
Hoffman. And that's about it. Is there,
The Coen Brothers are the photographers in the execution.
yes, the execution reporters.
room,
Yes.
I think it's called.
Yes. Ted Raimi pops up, obviously. Paul L. Smith, it is funny. He's one of those guys where you're like, well, of course he played Bluto. They probably saw him on the street and they were like, here he is, Bluto in real life. He's also Beast Raban in Dune. He's actually really good in David Lynch's Dune.
But the other thing with him, do you know this wild thing about his? I'm pulling this up because I want to get the specifics right. So it was Terrence Hill and Bud Spencer were like the big Italian comedy duo in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Terrence Hill from Superfuzz.
Yes. And there was a guy named Antonio Cantafora who went by Michael Kobe, who was a Terrence Hill lookalike. And he cast Paul L. Smith, who is from Massachusetts, to be like his burly cohort. And they essentially did like rip-off buddy movies, trying to trick the audience into thinking they were seeing Terrence Hill and Bud Spencer movies.
Uh-huh.
Like he built this odd career in the 70s, like at, sort of running concurrent with like the end of the spaghetti Western shit, where he did like 10 Italian buddy comedies. and then Midnight Express, and then he becomes Bluto, The In-Laws. Like then he becomes an American comedy guy, weirdly.
That's interesting because Superfuzz is how I know Terrence Hill, and this movie has real Superfuzz vibes. If you've ever seen it, starts with a guy in an electric chair.
Interesting.
But if that's the case, it's funny because why am I saying this? Oh, Ernest Borgnine is the second banana in Superfuzz, who he could also have been, doubling for at some point.
Ernest Borgnine would fit right in Crimewave, by
Right.
the way.
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
There was some burly bearded Italian guy who Paul L. Smith became the poor man's option of for like 8 years with misleading posters that would make people think they were seeing that guy's movie.
So production starts in 1983. Halloween 1983 ends in January 1984. They shot it in Detroit. Sam Raimi thought like, this is perfect. It's got kind of an out of time feel. You can, shoot in these like old Motor City, vintage hotels, right? Like that have kind of like a throwbacky, crimey feel, I guess, right? Just the kind of place where you'd imagine like a bellhop is getting a drink and then a mobster shows up or whatever, all that shit. And what I guess everyone just says this movie was an absolute nightmare to make. It's partly that they shot it all at nights, obviously, and I think it was freezing cold. Like Detroit in the winter is not exactly like summery. But I don't know, like it just seems like as much as The Evil Dead was also a nightmare to make, everyone on The Evil Dead was like in the club, right? Like everyone's like, we're doing this together, it's collaborative, blood, sweat, and tears, right? And this seems like Sam Raimi being confronted with a real movie set and it, having to adjust to all that weird ego stuff.
Well, there's a sentence in the notes that JJ put together of like he got them to approve a budget of $2.5 million, but the thing that he didn't factor in when he budgeted it was like union costs and like 5 other things that he had skirted on The Evil Dead because he was making a small movie with his friends and all the money just went on screen. So immediately they realized like we have not given ourselves the budget necessary for this film. Everything immediately cost like 30% more than they thought it would. And then on top of that, Raimi could not rein in his ambition. So when things were difficult and they were running over schedule, he refused to compromise and simplify his ideas. This is unattributed from the IMDb trivia, which is notoriously trustworthy. But I just want to read this because this feels like there are a lot of anecdotes like this about the making of the film. The crew spent a week filming on a Detroit street after dark, directly under a nursing home, with huge wind machines blowing for long hours. One evening, a glass bottle with a note in it crashed to the ground from an upper floor. The note inside read, "The noise is keeping me awake all night long, and I'm getting sick. I am dying because of you."
Oh, no.
Damn.
Every story feels like that, where they're like, they want to film this thing in the water, but the water had frozen over with ice, so they're using dynamite to blow up the water.
Yes, they had to blow up the water.
And you're like, how is that a story about the making of the movie and not a thing that happens in the movie?
That's sick.
Yeah, also, like, what's that conversation where it's like, fuck, what do we do? It's frozen over. And one guy's like, I'll call my dynamite guy.
Yeah,
like, is that a thing?
Sticks.
Yeah.
David.
Yeah? What's going on?
I'm thinking about the movies.
Of course.
You hear that state of serenity? I'm in such a relaxed, calm, sort of Zen flow state.
I do hear that. I also hear that signature B in movies there.
The movies. The movies.
It suggests to me that you're talking about something different.
I'm telling you exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mubi.
Okay. Well, Mubi.com, great friends of the show. It's a curated streaming service that shows exceptional films from around the globe.
Ah.
Every day they premiere a new film.
Yes. And it goes from iconic directors to emerging. We're fighting over who gets to read each line first.
We love to talk about Mubi.
We love to talk about the movies, and there's always something new to discover on Mubi. Each and every film is hand-selected. They're not just reaching into a junk drawer and dropping a bunch of movies on the landing page. It's like your own personal film festival streaming anytime, anywhere. Let's look at what's streaming on Mubi right now. Here's one, David. A little movie called Near Dark. Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark, a movie we've covered before in the podcast that is notoriously, oftentimes, hard to watch, not
Very
streaming,
true.
not
Very
available on
true.
physical media. This is a great time to watch that.
It's something that anytime it's available, you should jump on it because you don't know.
Yep.
I'm taking a look. Lingui the Sacred Bonds. I'm hearing great stuff about that. That was a Cannes last year.
Got Buster Keaton's The General.
Oh, Griffin Fave.
And perfect timing for March Madness. Sarah Polley's Take This Waltz, 35 Shots of Rum, the Claire Denis movie. These are some of the things I'm seeing here.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on Mubi, and it's just different from other streaming services in a really good way. It's well curated. It's got all kinds of fun options that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And you can try Mubi free for 30 days at Mubi.com/check. That's MUBI.com/check. You get a whole month of great cinema for free. Mubi. Okay, so let's see. The cinematographer is Robert Primes, who had just worked with Francis Ford Coppola on Rumblefish, but he was like second unit on that. So
Sure.
whatever. But he and Raimi seem to vibe, but I guess Raimi would make demands such as, I want to zoom into this guy's mouth and see a tongue and two teeth, and then the actor will say the line. And Primes would be like, what are you talking about? How the fuck am I supposed to do that? You know what I mean? It's like that Sam Raimi thing of like, he knows what he wants in his head, and then he's, trying to explain it to crew members, and they're like, I've never done anything like that before. Like, which, God bless him. Like, it's good. Like, I love that Sam Raimi does this shit, but it must have been crazy.
There's this Prime quote I like here, Prime's quote. He said, I couldn't understand, why would you do this? Why would you zoom into somebody's mouth? I'm a little older now, and I understand it's incredibly entertaining. It's an exaggeration. It's a different style. It doesn't have to allude to the classical tradition of filmmakers. It's his worldview. He also said, like, Sam would read the script and he'd go, nich, and was like acting it out. The big impression I got was a comic book. It didn't deal with the subtleties of human consciousness. It didn't deal with indecision and gray tones. It was almost like this was a bad guy and he's really, really bad. It almost seemed like caricatures of two-dimensional people. Caricatures of two-dimensional people is a really good way to describe the energy of this movie.
Right. He takes something like a one line description of a character, and he's like, but let's strip that down. Like, let's right.
And also at the same time, amp that up.
Sam Raimi, he's ambitious. He works really, really hard. A lot of people say it was a little exhausting. He was maybe moving too slowly for the studio's comfort. He was maybe not going to hit his budget target or whatever. It's one of those things where when you hear about it, I'm like, I imagine making this movie, I would be pissed off. And then, of course, this happens with movies where you read these stories and you're like, yeah, but the final product, holy shit. Like, you read about freaking Mad Max Fury Road and you're like, but it ended up being worth it, right? Like, that's something to be proud of for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And then instead, when it's Crimewave and no one sees it and it becomes like the forgotten Sam Raimi movie, I'm sure that's frustrating.
Yeah, when it was that difficult to make and it was sort of taken away from you and most people dislike it. It's like the Coens, I feel like, just don't talk about it, period. And Raimi, whenever he's asked about it, will offer like a one sentence quote, which is just a miserable, miserable episode of my life. We'll just like say one thing like that.
Part of me thinks that that's because for the Coen Brothers in particular, that it's so clearly like the nascent stage of their bag of tricks. And not that it's a limited bag, but it's so clearly in the formative stages. And I think that's embarrassing for them. And they don't, because there's like, this movie feels like Fargo. This movie feels like Hudsucker Proxy, even a little No Country for Old Men. It does, right? So they don't want people to go back and see how like unformed they were at that point. Same with Raimi probably too, but for all the other reasons.
But he's also making this after Evil Dead. It's like you've nailed this kind of once already,
but not with this budget. I mean, the money, like you're saying, the budget of this movie kind of ruined it. He doomed it, I would say.
Absolutely, and that's why like they had all control wrestled from them, because it was like, this movie's a mess and the money people are on set and they're going like, Sam, we watched you do 30 takes of this thing with the fan. why aren't you moving on? It's freezing. It's 4:00 in the morning. And he'd be like, I don't have it yet. And there was just like, he just speaks very purely about like, I have a lot of respect for this. I treat my crew with respect, but we're like paying respect to the tradition of this thing, and we have to get it right. I know what it is in my mind's eye. Can I read this Prime's quote here about the car? Did you see this one, David?
Yeah, that was the quote we should read, I think. Yes. This is the best summation of what it's like to work with young Sam Raimi.
Yes. So Robert Primes, the DP, says, my little joke I used to make about this is that to Sam Raimi, when the script says the car pulls off the road, that actually means that the car is in the right-hand lane of a busy freeway when suddenly the driver jerks the wheel left, goes into traffic, causing cars to spin out and tractor trailers to jackknife. The car then jumps the divider, turning into oncoming traffic, which swerves around, and then the car pulls off the road 6 lanes over on the other side. That's what the car pulls off the road means to Sam Raimi.
And he never, would you agree, Griffin? He never loses that, except, I mean, we'll talk about it in a while. Like, A Simple Plan is kind of famous for the studio basically had someone on set being like, make sure he doesn't fucking move the camera like a crazy person. Like,
right.
But it like takes that long for, and I think by the time he's making that movie, he's more mature and he understands like, yeah, I don't need the camera to go into anyone's mouth.
He's also talked about on that movie that he was like, I know I have this reputation. I want to challenge myself to move the camera as little as possible. Yeah.
But like by and large, that is the Sam Raimi thing where he's like, why should one thing happen when 8 things could happen really quickly? And it would like, it'll be this like little overload of joy for the viewer. And I like it.
I was never happy when I was a teenage Sam Raimi fan until I saw the zoom, the zoom in, pull back.
That's when
shot.
Right.
I needed it. I needed it at least once per movie. And I appreciate him for doing it as much as he did.
Look, the week we're recording this, there has been a lot of Twitter piling on a real underdog movie, a movie that has not gotten a fair shake called Spider-Man No Way Home. This movie has been embarrassed so roundly. It was snubbed by the Oscars. No one's giving it any respect.
Snubbed, you say?
Snubbed. Do they not understand? It's so rude of them to not nominate it because people like that movie. But the last week or two, there's been a lot of people because there was a video that went out breaking down the VFX of the movie and sort of like revealing how hermetically that movie was constructed and all this shit and saying like, why does this look so bad? Why does a movie this expensive look so bad? And I don't mean to add on to this pileup, but when this movie was coming out, the director did interviews where he said like, because we're bringing Molina and Defoe in, we were like, we need to have a Raimi cam. We had a Raimi cam. We established the language of the Raimi cam, and we try to shoot certain scenes with the Raimi cam sensibility and get into the head of like how Raimi would move his camera around this. And it's not even that I feel like the movie fails to emulate that style. It does not even feel like they are attempting it. And who knows if all of that ended up on the cutting room floor,
it might,
or it's chopped to ribbons and it's little pieces that are unrecognizable. But to that point, when you're watching a Raimi movie, like you say, Brennan, there within the first 10 minutes will be one of those moves where you go like, okay, it's him.
Yeah. I feel at home now. Yeah.
Right. And kind of no one else really knows how to pull it off the same way.
I have not seen that film, but in fact, I had never heard of it. But
it's a small little underdog film.
The way you describe it, it sounds like something I should probably check out. Something that may improve my soul a bit.
Absolutely. David, can you read this thing about the Luma crane?
Oh, for crying out loud. Yeah, of course. I mean,
or paraphrase it, but I just think this is a very important story relative to what we're talking about right now.
They wanted a Luma crane, a classic, it's sort of the crane with the counterweight, right? You guys know movies better than me. You guys have been on sets. You put the camera at the top. You can pan and zoom with the remote control. You don't need a 200-pound person holding a camera, right? It's all lighter, right? And the studio's like, no, you're playing with gadgets too much. You can't have a Luma crane.
They're like halfway through production at this point. They're already
we're not getting you another fucking new invented camera. No, we're not doing this. And so Sam had used that shaky cam in Evil Dead where they had like put the camera on a 2x4 and you have people running around with it, right? Like that's how they made all those crazy camera shots work in Evil Dead.
But it's literally like 2 guys running, holding either side of a wooden plank with a camera like nailed to it.
Correct. And so with this shaky cam, we went running down a block. We had someone get out of a car. She started running. We run after her, and there was nothing that looked like it. Then the bad guy, Paul Smith, comes out, and we turn around and we do a 180-degree move, and we loop around and we run in the other direction. It's all this crazy, flashy stuff that they do, basically for no money. The studio sees the dailies, calls him on the phone, and says, "How the fuck you were told no Lumacrane?" Like they assumed, like, you must have slipped this by us. Who gave you a Lumacrane? And they were like, we literally did that for 75 cents. Like
it's
that
a piece of wood. Yeah.
Right. Which is
Fucking
great.
awesome.
Like I love that.
Yes. That's the stuff in this movie that remains so infectious. I mean, I guess we should try to run through the events of this movie.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Yeah.
Brendan is the person who's seen this the most, and Ben is the person who gave this 10 bonks. Do you want to attempt to guide us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me, so I'm happy to walk you through it. A man is about to be executed.
Oh no.
He's in the chair.
He's being taken from his cell to the chair, and he uses this time.
Does he seem though like that he is, sort of accepting of this? No, he's still trying to get out of it. He's having fun.
He is fighting it tooth and nail. He is against this.
It's not a solemn sort of John Coffey walk to the big chair.
He claims that he is innocent, and so he's going to take this time, this walk, this drag, if you will, to the chair. He's going to take this time to tell us his story.
And we've also intercut the very beginning of this movie, these nuns silently driving in a fury, listening to the radio,
which is telling
this imminent
us
execution. Yeah,
the radio announcer's giving us all the particulars. And I didn't look it up. I don't know who this guy is, and I had forgotten about it. It's one of the things that made me love this movie. The guy dusting off the electric chair in slow motion, and then grinning and presenting the chair as he comes through the door. That's just golden shit. That's very Hudsucker too. It's just like you get this old guy with this face from wherever it's from.
There's the guy in Hudsucker who paints the names on the door and scrapes them off.
Yes,
right.
It's that beat. It's that beat, and it's so good. And it's in slow motion in this, or he's just doing it very slowly. I couldn't tell, but it's so good.
But just these sort of haunted character actors with Easter Island head faces, where you're just like, what is this guy's life, and why does he seem to get so much perverse glee out of doing this horrible thing?
Yes, they all do. I mean, they're all just hard for it. All of the governor wants this to happen. Everyone behind the glass wants it to happen. The Coen brothers who are taking the pictures, everyone wants this guy dead.
It's like an outing, though, too. That's what's so fucked up, is that people were just going to executions like that.
Yeah. And it doesn't even seem like it's family members who have some, who want to see some sort of some sense of closure or justice. They just are, having a nice evening.
No, the public hates the idea of this guy, and they want to see him fry.
And it's funny too how public the crime wave actually was once you see it in flashback, because it to anyone who was witnessing it, it's very clear who was doing it.
Yeah, it's not easily mistaken.
But he's seated in the chair, and he finally gets to tell his story, basically to us. They're not listening. And we find that he is tech guy. He's the guy installing the surveillance cameras for these security consultants, these guys who own a security company.
They're sort of having like a Celino and Barnes moment where they're kind of splitting up, having been partners for many years.
Oh, right, because Bruce Campbell is going to turn it into, he's going to sell, the one partner is going to sell it out from the other guy, and Bruce Campbell, Ronaldo, is going to turn it into a burlesque house of sorts, it would seem.
And the one guy here, Mr. Trend, who is the husband of Louise Lasser, is played by Edward Pressman, who also produced this movie, was a humongous producer. He was the heir to the Pressman toy riches, the board game and marble company. and he grew up a movie nerd. He was kind of like an original Megan Ellis, where he was like, I'm going to use my money to make good movies. And he produced like Sisters, Badlands, Phantom of the Paradise, Das Boot, Conan the Barbarian. This is sort of coming at the end of his maybe original good run. After this, I mean, he produces True Stories, but he also does the He-Man movie. He does some more good movies after this, but this is like his only real acting credit.
Was he one of the producers that Campbell didn't get along with?
I believe so. It's very bizarre. It's bizarre that he has this large of a role in the movie as an actor when that's not a thing he ever did, and that it was this contentious.
Apparently, he played a lonely cook in Street Fighter. That is the only other acting credit I can find.
Which he also produced like a
Yes.
decade after this.
That must have been like the last film he produced, no?
No, he's still producing. Well, not still, but he did do like Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, and Wall Street Money Never Sleeps. Like he's done movies in recent years.
Those are both because he produced the original movies. He might have gotten grandfathered in, but he produced like Fur, the Diane Arbus movie, Never Die
Amazing
Alone,
Grace.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Party
he did some
Monster, The
stuff.
Cooler. He's a wild career if you dig into it. Ben, he produced the entire Crow franchise.
Oh wow, wait, Crow franchise. You're saying
The Crow.
sure?
The movie The Crow, right?
And I guess
And then
there
they
is,
had-
yeah, right. There's a bunch of other movies. Just that
City
threw
of
me off for a second.
Angels.
I'm like, franchise, but I guess there's like a decent amount of like straight to kind of video.
Mostly straight to video, yes.
Yeah, okay. I've never seen any of those. Are they good?
The sequels, never seen them. The original is a special movie, I would say, but the others
Oh,
not
yeah.
so much. Anyway, Crimewave. Yeah. So what's happening in Crimewave? You guys explain. I honestly, you guys are doing a great job. I don't remember anything about the plot of this movie, and I watched it
Okay.
2 days ago.
So Bruce Campbell's trying to break up the company.
He is buying the company out from the one guy's selling out the other guy. And the guy, Pressman, the guy who Pressman is playing, Mr. Trend, finds out and hires these two exterminators to kill him. Which, by the way, I love the machine that Brian James uses. That he has a dial that he turns for rats or men, and then later on in the movie, heroes. Come on, that's a great bit. That's a fucking great bit.
Their look is incredible.
The look is incredible. Goddamn, if they had just let him use his actual voice.
But then also the amount of sound effects every time they're on screen. Like there's that like extended minute
It's
long
very busy.
shot,
Yes.
right? Where Brian James is waiting for the elevator, chewing gum, and he won't stop cracking his neck and like clicking his teeth and shit.
Every time, I think that's why it feels incomprehensible in so many ways, because every time they're on screen, like David said, it's busy, and it's busy to the point where it's like, it didn't have to be a 5-minute wacky walkie wookie section. This could have been fucking 3. This could have been 2.5 minutes. We got it. But they did not want to cut those guys.
No, all the Evil Dead movies have, for how manic and how fast moving they are, they have like these moments where Raimi will allow things to breathe or reset for a moment. And this movie is like operating at this energy at all times, and there's so much stimuli at every single moment.
It's like the little ashes in Army of Darkness. It's like, it's an entire movie just populated with mini ashes.
Right. And it's like the music is crazy, and he's putting sound effects on it, and the camera's doing crazy things, and the actors are doing crazy things, and the plot is dense.
So these guys get hired to kill the one partner. Louise Lasser plays the wife of Trend, and they live across the street from the office, and she witnesses them going in. And Trend goes across the street to show her that it's no big deal, nothing's wrong, to make sure, I guess, right? I don't quite understand why he does that. So she says, "Oh, he's in danger." Trend goes across the street to allay her fears, and so that she doesn't call the cops. And while he's there, he sees that Odegaard is dead. Great shock cut there. Then Brian James pops up and kills him too.
Now, everything you're saying makes no sense. Just FYI.
As I'm saying it, I'm getting confused.
Right. I mean, again, there are specific scenes that are very interesting to watch.
Yes.
But like when you lay it out all end to end, I do wonder, it's like, was this the plan, or is this more like the sort of the butchered thing they ended up with? And at a certain point they were just like, I don't know, just put it out. Like let's stop worrying about everything flowing very logically together. I mean, I can read about post-production.
It's hard to tell because I mean, I feel like when they do talk about it, when Raimi talks about it and Campbell talks about it, they don't talk about it as if like we had this perfect movie and it was taken away from us. They sort of talk about it like the production was a nightmare. We didn't totally know how to execute what we were doing, and then they took it away from us and made it worse.
Right.
I think they like learned some lessons in clarity from this movie.
It's right, but this is not a situation where they're like, there is a perfect cut of that movie that exists.
Right.
Okay, we should talk about meeting the nerd kid, dorky kid.
Oh, yes. Meeting the nerd kid.
Mhm.
Well, he's installing video cameras in Trend's hallway because he works for Trend. And Trend gives him a big speech at the door where he basically says, you got to get yourself a girl.
It's the sort of quality of life priorities speech. Yeah.
Exactly. And then he goes downstairs. This guy, Vic, who is our hero, goes downstairs, sees a beautiful woman almost get run over by an exterminator truck. We'll get to that. And saves her. Or does he save her or just pick her up? He
just picks her up. Yeah.
He just picks her up.
But she's not that interested in him.
She's not interested. And then Bruce Campbell, playing the role of Ronaldo the heel, shows up and asks her out to a date that night. Jesus, this is an exhausting movie to summarize.
I mean, and we're not even that far into the movie. And like after this is
the
when
first
just like
4 minutes,
a bunch of murders start to happen that Vic is the being blamed for or whatever. Like
also all these things happen. Everything happens on a corner. Everything happens catty corner to the other thing. So like the apartment building is catty corner from the
nightclub
security. Yeah, from the nightclub and from the security office. From that. So everything is taking place in this one, not even a block radius, just like one corner where three corner intersection, basically. And that is very confusing. That is never very well established geographically.
No, which also it's the camera's moving around so fucking much.
There is no there's no continuity. No one's there. For all the money, they definitely, I don't think, had a script supervisor who was paying much attention.
Yeah, because there's like some moment where she drops a pot from the window, but then the way that the camera moves, it's like just so confusing, and like it's like she was across the street and now she's on this side of the street.
Yes.
There's some stuff like that.
Yeah, you don't realize that he's actually directly below her window at that time. It seems like he's across the street.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a fucking mess. This movie's a fucking mess.
It's kind of a mess. I mean, I think we could even just say like they basically though go on some kind of date, or like we should just talk about the nightclub section maybe before we get to the hijinks.
This is where my wife goes, "Oh, the mask." She's like, because
it's
really interesting.
That's a good call.
So much like the mask. Yeah. And especially with Bruce Campbell in there doing that, that character.
No, but that makes it. The mask also takes place in kind of a world of gangsters that is not quite like our, right? Like in that weird sort of heightened reality beyond the fact that the mask is there, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, all the gangsters in the mask operate like 1940s gangsters, and it takes place in this odd, brightly colored metropolis at night.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're like playing swing music. It's like what, like, and dancing. It's weird.
You are making me realize, how much the mask is kind of executing what they were trying to do with this movie in a way that was palatable to audiences by going like, well, there's a crazy supernatural explanation for everything.
That's the thing. And that's why the normal Raimi camera stuff and absurdity doesn't work, because there is no supernatural, right? There's no supernatural element. There's no demons flying or anything like that.
And there's no initial grounding element.
None whatsoever. I will say also, it reminded me so much also of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was only what 2-3 years later, because it's got
like 4 years later, maybe, right? Yeah,
it's that same tone, that
Yes.
same leaning into the slapsticky, the cartoon elements of it,
and
but
the
since
throwback.
and the throwback gangsters and the throwback, that's all that sort of we feel that a lot in the once we get to the nightclub. The Rialto, is it called? Very good.
A lot of the quotes you read, very, very good, Brendan. 5 memory points. A lot of the quotes you read from like Campbell talking about this movie is just sort of like, we all maybe were too ambitious and too in love with the idea of like, what if we put together all these different genres that we like? And what if you had like a 40s noir film that had the energy of a Three Stooges comedy, but also like the shock of like a horror movie and all that sort of shit.
And like a 30s Warner Brothers gangster picture,
Right.
like everything just smushed together.
But the comedy is very contemporary and very like what's the like where you believe in nothing. God, I can't think of the phrase, like
Nihilistic.
It's very nihilistic.
Yeah.
It's like it feels very though of the moment, or like I don't know why. Like the style of comedy is very like,
Well, like everyone in this movie is kind of either stupid or bad, right? Like all the good people are dumb. They don't really understand what they're doing, and all the bad people are like really bad. And yes, unlike Roger Rabbit and Mask, which like would become huge hits, but had like a clean explanation for why the world is like this.
Right.
This movie just expects you to go like, and you're on the same wavelength as these guys, right? And it does feel like a movie that was written by them at like 3 o'clock in the morning, just like riffing off each other with their common reference base.
If it worked, it would work. There are movies like this that grab you
Yes.
by the hand and race you through all kinds of mania, and you go with it because you're on board for whatever, because like you say, Griffin, maybe because there's one character you can identify with or one sort of emotional through line. Crimewave might even work, I think, if the mystery of like, so why is this guy in the chair was a little more specific. But instead, it's kind of not. Like, it's kind of, the framing device is kind of irrelevant. Like, because
But I agree with you that it doesn't feel like an ill-begotten movie. Like, it does feel like you understand what they were trying to do, and what they were trying to do was so ambitious and so alchemical that it was really hard to pull off before all these. It would have been hard to execute just on an artistic, creative basis before all these other factors come into play.
Yes, right.
So should we talk though about just basically meeting Bruce Campbell's character and like the heel and just all of the great fucking lines he is delivering like as this character?
I just feel in very safe hands when he's on screen.
Yeah.
So do I, exactly. And that's the struggle with this movie, is just like wanting him to be there more. My favorite line he says at the bar after he leaves her, after he punches out Vic, he's talking to that other woman at the bar, and we zoom in on him from a distance, and you hear him say, "Oh, the cab." Oh no, sorry, that's later when he's walking past the storefront window, and he says, "The cab, you'll pay for that. I don't want to break 100." Which, I mean, it's a line, and you barely hear it, and it's great. The cab, you'll pay for that.
I haven't seen you before. I love that in a woman.
I like that in a woman. Yeah. Great line.
It's a good line.
It's so funny that Raimi was like, well, this guy's clearly my leading man. I'm going to write the leading man part for him, right? And they write this part that, like, from a modern perspective, you're like, it would have been weird to have Bruce Campbell play that part. But I'm even just thinking back to a couple weeks or months ago, whenever we recorded our fucking Evil Dead 1 episode, where he is so innocent and sweet and like soft and delicate in that movie relative to the sort of very self-aware Bruce Campbell we know today. And here they like throw him this consolation role and try to beef it up to get him on set. And in the process, accidentally create what then will become the dominant Bruce Campbell archetype, right? Like he plays in this kind of becomes his main stock in trade for the next couple of decades, whether it's done well or poorly. But like this is what they're casting him to do in Congo, like this is the arched eyebrow, smug, punchable, but still funny kind of like glib, arrogant macho dude. And then like Ash even turns into this more and more.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny that there's this sort of like secret gift here in how hard Campbell kills this role that both like helps Raimi know how to use him even better going forward and also becomes the thing that people typecast him for.
Such a good point. Yeah.
But he is, yes. You're watching a guy who's just like so in the fucking pocket.
Not only that, but he understands the tone of this movie perfectly, perhaps because he's got a really established relationship with Raimi and can tap into what Raimi wants in a way that maybe others can't. I don't know.
And they're giving him all the best lines for that reason.
Yeah. A lot of the best stuff happens in the nightclub setup. I will say that I'm going to segue into my favorite bit by getting back to the plot for a second. Ronaldo the heel and what's her name?
Nancy, right?
Nancy. Ronaldo the heel and Nancy are on a date. It's not going well, as evidenced by the first thing we hear. She says, "I'm not that kind of girl," and he says, "Well, with a little practice, you could learn to be."
Yeah.
It's never a good sign that your date is going well. And then Vic shows up and basically crashes the date.
Well, isn't it I've seen this 29 times less than you, but is it sort of that he was motivated by Tren's speech to be like, I have to chase after that woman. I need to.
He's got
right.
to yeah, exactly. He's got to take the bull by the horns, and he's got to go get the gal.
This was like another weird budget thing. Was the cabin in the first Evil Dead cost them $2,000 to rent for the entire duration of the production, and this set for the Rialto cost them $30,000.
Oh, whoa.
And his whole budgeting of the movie was based on him knowing what things cost on Evil Dead. And then it's like, here's a location we need just for 10 minutes of the film. Their first offer is 10, and then they start upping the number, and eventually it gets to 30. And everything just kind of escalated like that.
And that's why they have to spend so much time in the nightclub, I imagine.
Yes, and there's another thing where the person who owned the building demanded that all the extras be like members of his club. Is that right?
What?
A building, it had previously been a hotel. It was going to be turned to a retirement home. The first two offers from production were $10,000, $20,000, both of which were rejected. Then they agreed to $30,000 on the condition that the building's owners would be extras drinking martinis in the hotel ballroom.
Literally the story of every shitty little movie I've ever made.
Right.
Is why are the producers here? Yeah.
Right.
The gift is that they didn't demand fucking dialogue. That's the worst version of that set, which you and I have both been on.
My son here wants to be an actor.
Right.
Some guy in suspenders. That's what I always say. Come on, my son Jimmy here. He loves the movies.
He's funny. He's funny. Be funny.
Yeah, tell him the joke, right. You tell me, Jimmy.
Doing the, come on, look at that face, guy. Making a frame with your fingers. Anyway, what happens later? I really like the sequence with the doors or whatever you would just the walls.
The
right?
Doors is great, but the sequence in the dance contest, because Ronaldo leaves her, stiffs her with the check. She has no interest in Vic, but she says, "Can you loan me, what is it, $36?"
Yeah.
And he says, "I would love to, but I don't have the money." And then the announcer says there's a dance contest about to happen. They hard cut to them starting the dance contest. You think there's going to be this whole number, and then there's a whip pan into the kitchen where they're just doing dishes while still dancing. That's my second favorite bit in this movie.
It's one of the better. I mean, you saying where this movie fails is often with like the setup punchline verbal jokes.
Mm-hmm.
That whole exchange of $36, I wish I never carry that amount of money around with me on my person, to then the announcer saying that the prize money for the dance contest is exactly $36.
Right.
Like, that's a pretty fun cartoon logic run of lines.
It's so good. And then to get into to take it all the way to the kitchen where they're washing dishes is great follow through.
Okay. I have a question about this trope of washing dishes because you can't pay the check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever actually done that? Truly. tell me one person that you have ever met in your fucking life that is like, I don't have any money. What am I gonna do?
Put me to
work
work now.
Yeah, you're the dishwasher
we gotta file all
now.
your paperwork. Do you have an I-9?
Here's my question: where is the dishwasher? Does he get off the night? Like, are they? Why? I mean, did they just plan on always having someone not being able to pay the check on certain nights?
Are they always one dishwasher short in order to accommodate for dine and dashers? Attempted dine and dasher.
Well, the dishwasher can always hold out hope that someone will come to dine and dash, and then he'll get off early. You know, that's one perk. I used to be a dishwasher, and that's something we thought about all the time.
Really?
You were always waiting.
Always waiting.
Huh.
Maybe somebody will come and not have their $36. I wonder if it's a reference to some silent film or some very famous bit in a film from so long ago we don't remember.
Right. Like it never actually happened in society, but it happened once as a punchline, and now it gets perpetuated as if we're riffing on the actual real world occurrence.
Yeah, and it was such a huge thing. This movie was so big and whatever in 1929 that everyone talked about it for 2 years, but we don't remember the original.
I say what we should do, listeners, is go to a restaurant, no money, no cash, nothing. Then when, it's time to pay the check, be like, all right, I'll head in the back. I'm ready to do some dishes. Roll up your sleeves and see how that goes. You probably will end up being arrested.
Ben, I agree. You absolutely should try this.
Yeah. If not, at least start getting it going. Make it more pervasive so it makes sense.
Right. You want to at least get the ball rolling so that when someone else asks for that, the restaurants will be like, yeah, sure. We know about this. Right. We've heard of this.
Yeah.
I found what's it called? Quora, the question answer website.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Do restaurants allow someone to wash dishes as compensation if they cannot pay? Top answer: no, they won't.
Are you sure?
If you don't have the money to pay for a meal that you've eaten, one of three things will happen. One, the restaurant will ask you to leave something that you'll return for when you've retrieved the funds to pay them. Two, depending on the mood of the owner, the amount of the bill, and the reasons that you have forgotten your method of payment, they may simply say forget it and comp you your meal. This will rarely happen, and no one should expect this to occur when they dine out. Option number three, they will call the police and have you cited or arrested for fraud.
Oh, that's fraud? That's not theft. Oh, fraud.
Defrauding an innkeeper is a serious offense in a number of states, so you may find that your meal costs you far more than if you had simply paid for it in the first place.
I would love to go to jail for defrauding an innkeeper, as long as they phrase it that way.
Right.
DFI. It's another DFI for Heinze over here.
I agree that Ben should absolutely try this.
But you should go in and order the menu and be like, I'll give you a week of dishes. Like, you go in there, you eat 18 courses, and then you're like, sorry. Like,
how many dishes would the fettuccine Alfredo cost?
Yeah, right. I negotiate it. I'm like, all right, so if I want to get a dessert, can I maybe come like on Wednesday to do dishes for a couple hours if we add that on?
It's basically your interview. It's your job interview is stealing a delicious meal.
Hi, I'd like to work for this restaurant. I have no money.
I want to leave a good tip. So can I clean some cutlery as well? How many knives would it take to equal 20%?
phone's ringing. I'm going to pick it up. Click. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. What's going on?
I think I'm in an ad read.
Sure you are, but who am I talking to?
Well, did I not give it away with the fact that I know I'm in an ad read?
Are you Deadpool?
I'm Deadpool!
Oh, no. You're too self-aware for me.
The most self-aware. I'm thinking this is a Mint Mobile ad read.
Well, you would know. You know everything. You have the all-seeing eye. You can look through the fourth wall.
Absolutely, and if saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2022, why are you still paying insane amounts of money every month for wireless? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service, online only, Mint Mobile lets you maximize your savings with plans starting at just $15 a month, and you know what else I know?
What else?
Ryan Reynolds is one of the owners of Mint Mobile.
Oh, I don't think I actually knew that. Sure. I didn't know. There you go. That actually rings a bell. Right.
David, you know what else I know?
What else do you know?
Ryan Reynolds plays me in a movie.
I didn't want you to say it. It's too much postmodernism for my brain.
I know I'm in an ad read, and I know who owns the company that the ad read is for, and I know that he played me, a character who knew he was in a movie.
Well, my question for you is, why are you paying insane amounts of money every month for wireless, Deadpool? You just switch to Mint Mobile.
David, truly, that is one thing I don't know. The only thing Deadpool doesn't know is why he's paying insane amounts of money per month.
I'm here to tell you, it's the first company to sell premium wireless service online only. It lets you maximize your savings with plans starting at just $15 a month. You go online only, you eliminate the traditional costs of retail. Those savings get passed on to you. You're going to get your unlimited talk and text, your high-speed data on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. You can keep your same number, keep your existing contacts. You choose the amount of monthly data right for you. You stop paying for data you never use. So just switch to Mint Mobile, get premium wireless service, and it starts at $15 a month.
David, that's humongous because you have no idea how out of control my texting bills are. Because every day I text every person in my contacts and say, I know that I'm texting you right now.
God, well, that sounds exciting. Listen, Deadpool, to get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/check. That's mintmobile.com/check. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/check.
And I know that that was a call to action, David.
Yep.
Deadpool.
Okay. So is there, anything else about crime? Well, explain the doors falling. The most Looney Tunes kind of Tex Avery sequence of this movie. Like, why is that happening?
She, at some point, she gets away from him. He's come up to, God, I keep having to go back. She gets away from Crush, who's trying to kill her because he witnessed, she saw him kill someone, and she gets away from him after a whole series. I'm amazed you want to skip the rug pulling sequence.
No, we can talk about I cannot order these things in my brain. That is the problem. I do not remember what happens when.
It's not that we don't want to talk about them. It's you're the only one who understands them.
Right.
She gets away from Crush. She runs to the office where she thinks her husband is maybe still there, which is, I mean, she's delusional at this point. That guy's dead. And she gets away from him. She gets into the back where apparently they have a demo of, I don't remember what it's called. Ben, do you remember the hallway, the most secure hallway in the world or something like that?
Yeah, the most secure hallway in the world, something to that effect.
Where, which she clearly knew about because it's her husband's company. And it's a series of doors that really, it's just a door that leads to another door.
It feels like the Get Smart opening. Like the idea of this location's so secure, you have to go through 18 different types of doors to get to the heart of the thing.
But only the last one has a lock on it. Which,
right.
Of course. And it's just a great, and then some sort of balletic music starts playing and it becomes just very Bugs Bunny. I love that sequence.
Right. I love that too.
And the doors are all different colors and they all start falling on him as he's chasing her.
And so really to just tie it all together, because I think this plot is like whatever confusing, is the wife gets away, but then goes into a box. She gets away from like these basically two maniacs, but she goes into a box that's like, going to be mailed to Abu Dhabi or something. Like it's that joke. And then really we have the couple, right? We can call them a couple, I guess, like whatever, though Vic and the girl, after being done with dishwashing, they kind of run into these maniacs. And then it's basically a couple of sequences of them just like kind of fighting each other more or less, right? Is that kind of how to structure it?
Huge freeway car chase that is 19 minutes too long, probably.
But is very technically impressive. And when you read the reviews of the movie at the time, everyone sort of spotlights, like, even the most dismissive ones are like, this end car chase kind of implies that this guy might have some talent.
Yeah, exactly. This guy isn't an idiot behind the camera or anything.
That's
right,
like when a new president bombs a new country and people say this is the day he became president. that's what a car chase, a relatively well executed car chase is for film critics. Sorry, David.
No, it's true. That's what we're like.
I love when Vic goes up to the old guy, right? And he's like, I need your car. He starts explaining something, and the old guy just goes, do you love her?
Do you love her?
That's such a fucking solid joke. I think that's so funny.
It is. And it should also crush at that point, right? I should be like cheering. That's my only issue. But yeah.
This is Vincent Canby's quote from the New York Times, his review of this movie. He said, "It's full of film knowledge and is amazingly elaborate for a low-budget movie. The only problem is that it's not funny. One smiles at the inspiration of the jokes, though not at their execution. The chase that ends the movie is something of a technical defeat, but it remains as dimly humorless as a smart film student's essay on how to shoot a chase." And that's like sort of the most positive review it got.
Right. It's kind of the reaction that 1941 got. Obviously, 1941 was on a much more massive scale, but that was the thing where the reviews were kind of like, this guy's obviously very technically accomplished. Why isn't this movie funny? Why is it kind of a track? Like, why is it yelling at me? Why is it a little too, and it's just hard to hit that carefree tone, I guess. But also some people love 1941. Some people love Crimewave.
Yeah.
And I support them. Look, here's some post-production stuff. The studio didn't like the movie. They said it should be told in flashbacks. They made them go to LA and do extensive reshoots, all the Hudsucker Penitentiary stuff, all of the bookends, right? They're like, that'll make it make more sense, which
I think that was a good call. I think it does make the movie make a lot more sense.
It gives it a little more of a spine. Right.
Yes.
They basically were like, we need a beginning and an ending that explains the middle, aka the movie you presented. Bruce Campbell says, it was horrible. It was a very depressing time because I guess this is what had not happened to them on Evil Dead. They're presenting a rough cut to the studio, and the studio is like, well, this doesn't work. And Raimi and Campbell are thinking like, well, we'll figure it out. Give us a minute. And they're like, no,
you've
no. Yeah, exactly. Get out of the way. We're gonna deal with this.
That was the one test you had, right? And you failed it.
They don't let Joe DeLuca, who does the incredible score for The Evil Dead, work on this movie. The studio hires a different composer, right?
And I hate the music. I hate the music in this.
The music is kind of annoying. Yeah.
The thing DeLuca said was that when he was
Lo Duca.
I'm sorry. The thing Lo Duca said when he was pitching the producers on his take for it was like, with these sorts of parody films like Airplane, they play the music really straight. Like they're not doing a comedy score. They're doing a score that sounds like it's out of an Irwin Allen film. And I think you need to do the same with this. And they got scared off by him saying, I'm going to play the music really straight. He did say that Raimi brought him back to do like the final reel or two of the movie. So the car chase is his music.
Right.
Again, they ended up letting him do a little bit of it sort of away from Watchful Eyes. But yes, the score is not great. It's a little too much.
The movie kind of was taken to film festivals around the world. It opened in Britain like a year before it came out in America. Things like it just came out in like dribs and drabs. Bruce Campbell said they had a very nice screening at the Seattle Film Festival where the host came on stage before the movie and was like, this movie is silly. Prepare to watch a silly movie. And Campbell's like, that was the only good reaction we got. And I think it's because the audience was well prepared for what they were about to watch.
It is wild. I mean, when we talk about movies that have like bad marketing or things like that, it does really affect the way people perceive movies, the frame that they're like put within, where a guy can get up on stage and use the word silly 30 seconds before the movie starts and it will play okay. And Bruce Campbell also said that was the screening that his mom was at.
Yes,
that's right. So that she likes the movie and he is like grateful that she saw the only time it ever played well with a crowd.
Right. What's it called? Embassy dumped the movie. They did not give it a proper release.
They had a deal with HBO, so it needed to get a perfunctory number of days in theaters in different cities in order for it to get whatever the pre-agreed HBO amount was. So they released it in like random cities.
They released it in Kansas and Alaska. which is funny. It did do a run. It screened in 7 theaters total. Apparently, it did do a 2-day run in New York City. 2 days.
2 days.
Can't even give it a whole weekend.
No. And the 2 days were Wednesday and Thursday.
But with all this said, like you said, like the reviews were not like cruel. Like they were all basically like, this thing is funny in in moments and interesting. It just doesn't totally work. Like it was like kind of a, like it's funny, the Canby review you quoted, Griff, references Eating Raoul, the Paul Bartel movie, which is one of the greatest movies of the 80s. And he's like, there's a guy who knows how to make a cartoon on screen that's funny. Like that guy understands how to present the aesthetic and present the jokes and all that. And like he's like, and Raimi's kind of going for that, but he's not getting it. Right.
And Kimpy's like, Bartel's the only one who knows how to do this. Everyone else is failing. And they're also, a lot of the reviews have the exact same tone you see in like Raising Arizona reviews a year or two later than this, where you're like, we get it. It's impressive. Do you have anything to say? You know? They're sort of like, this movie is more storyboarded than it is directed. Look at all your references. We get it. You're very smart. You're very clever. You have a lot of energy. Is there any perspective here?
Yeah. David Edelstein kind of liked it in The Village Voice. That called it a Jerry Lewis extravaganza about serial killers. Some people kind of got it.
Yeah.
But obviously, like we say, it's the movie that nobody wants to talk about. It burns Raimi so badly that he's like, I guess I'll make The Evil Dead again. Like, that's the only thing I can do.
The thing he actively resisted the first time. But I having seen this now, and we recorded these episodes out of order.
We did the 3 Evil Deads first, weirdly. Not intentionally, but we just did the 1, 2, 3.
No, we did all 3 Evil Deads in a row for whatever weird reason, are now the filling in the gaps of the movies in between the Evil Deads. But this movie in between really helps clarify the leap in Raimi's style between Evil Dead 1 and 2. Not just, I think, the confidence and the sort of like focus of it, of knowing he cannot let the thing get ripped out of his hands again, but also that he is incorporating more of the manic comedy of this movie into Evil Dead 2. Like, it feels like he wants to prove that he can make the cartoon movie work and not just do another, horror movie again.
I'm happy it exists. I guess that's my
too.
take on crime. And I'm happy Ben loved it. And obviously the Brendan has such a soft spot for it.
Here's my genuine takeaway from this movie. I want to watch it again. Like, I want to, for as much as I think it's flawed, watching it the first time, I was like, this sucks that I'm only watching this for the first time, and I'm not going to have as good of an understanding of this as Brendan does. Like, I want to dig through this movie enough that I can sort of make sense of it, as opposed to now where I'm just like, I'm really carried over by the energy and the style of this thing.
I'd like to see it in a theater. I know that's not something that happens often, but like that might be fun to try and lock in with it more in a dark room. It was like a little, it wasn't perfect to watch this at like 10 a.m. One morning when I'm just kind of like sitting down with my coffee. I don't know.
Brendan, are there any larger Raimi thoughts you want to share here, since this is the one episode you get to appear on?
LRTs? I get to have an LRT?
If you want to throw out an LRT.
Larger Raimi thoughts. I don't know. I think we.
Is Darkman still your favorite? Like, is that, or no? That was your entree. But like, what's your top Raimi?
That was my entree. I still love Darkman. I watched Darkman as recently as 8 years ago, and I think it still fucks.
Yeah, it fucks.
Pretty darn hard. Bruce Campbell, very end, last shot of the movie. No, it's not my favorite Raimi anymore. And when I stopped watching Sam Raimi films, I did it with a vengeance. I'm interested in what happens when you guys get to the Oz movie. I never even saw it.
Brennan, it's the only movie he's made in the last 10 years.
Right, but I couldn't even bring myself to watch it. So there is something about the Raimi with unlimited resource that felt to me like such a huge budget movie, and that I just didn't see it being good, having seen all of his films. And I don't know, it's like, this is an interesting film to talk about because it's the first time he had to work with a budget and producers who didn't give a shit about his passion and his particular vision. And then, once he gets into the Spider-Mans of it all, that's kind of the world he lives in.
Yeah.
But what's weird about it is, like, you go like, well, and then of course he had this transformation to being this big blockbuster filmmaker, and you're like, he made 3 Spider-Man movies, 2 of which he's like proud of, one of which he kind of is always apologizing for. He did 1 sort of throwback, smaller horror movie, and then 1 more big blockbuster, and that's been the last 20 years of his career. And now he's returning for the first time in 10 years to make another Marvel superhero movie. Like, you almost expect that, oh, he got sucked into the Spider-Man thing, and then he made like 4 more big movies like that.
Right. No, Drag Me to Hell is great.
Drag Me to Hell, you either expect that he would make more small movies like that, or that he would make 3 more movies like Oz. And it's sort of the classic, like, Burton-y, like, he just got sucked into the system and swallowed whole. And instead, he just seems a little heartbroken, has been sitting on the sidelines.
But that's why Drag Me to Hell is so frustrating, where I'm like, you literally did the thing that we ask these big shots who then get kind of sucked into blockbuster world to do, which is basically like, sure, make the giant movies, work in the top echelons of the studio system, but then use that clout to occasionally, go off. You make a mid-budget movie. It makes everyone some money. It's good. No one's mad. He did that. It worked. Like, it was, we'll talk about this later. It was successful. Yeah. And he didn't do it again. And no one else does it. Like, it's just odd. I mean, I know he produced and he, gives the spotlight to other directors, like when he's doing that. And that's like, that is defensible. Like that's a real thing. Yeah.
But you think about within all those Ghost House deals, it's like they're producing 2 or 3 movies a year. You could just imagine he goes like, and I'm going to direct 1 of them. And no one would object to that. And what's more surprising about it is in all the different types of sort of blank check career narratives that we've covered on this show, Drag Me to Hell is like this very rare example of a filmmaker who successfully goes home again. Right? Like goes to the upper echelons and then is like, I'm going to make like a smaller movie like I did at the beginning of my career. And almost always that doesn't work. They can't go backwards, And you either get the Peter Jackson thing where it's like, I don't know how to make something for under $150 million anymore. Anything I adapt is going to become huge and unwieldy. Or they try to like roll back and act like they're a younger, less knowledgeable filmmaker and the movie feels like it has artificial breaks on it or something. But Drag Me to Hell totally fucking works. And it's like, you did that worked. You did Oz, that didn't work. And then he just spent a decade going like, I don't really know what to do anymore.
Well, yeah, shall we play the box office game, Griffin?
I have some final thoughts.
Oh,
Ben,
boy.
kick off.
Damn, because we birthday card the shit out of that fucking plot. It's all right though, whatever. I just feel like
we birthday card the shit out of that
you mean birthday sign, right? Like you
whatever.
Mean
big B,
right,
and then it's like we fucking are just trailing off.
I like this term of like making something so quick it could fit inside a birthday card.
All right. It's funny when after they have this terrible, I guess, date or whatever, she's just yelling at him, "No bright side. No bright side." I felt that. I also felt when, the little rat guy is like, "Sadly, you broke my shocker." Like whoever did that in the VO booth crushed.
You know what? That reminded me, Brian James hiding in her apartment while Reed Birney has his eyes closed and he's literally right next to him, like taking the coat from him and going, "Don't come in yet."
Yeah.
That bit crushes.
Yeah.
That bit crushes. It's a bit crusher.
It's a bit crusher. Speaking of bit crushers,
BC.
The rat guy rides the big rat that's on top of their truck. That fucking rips.
Big rat in general. Everything with the big rat. Yeah.
The overextended wind up too for the fact that the guy's gonna get knocked out by the bridge. Like how long they belabor that is really fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'll just say lastly, because I think the end is such a funny button that it's got to get shouted out.
Oh, it's maybe the best joke in the entire movie.
I truly, I think it was like maybe the one time where I really like really lolled.
You're talking the newspaper.
Yeah. Newspaper is like, I wanted to shout out because like, to me, it's like maybe one of the funnier ways of I've seen using that like gag.
It's a very Preston Sturges thing. I feel like he does gags like this a number of times, but all the nuns show up in time right before the switch is going to get flipped.
Yeah.
They're all freaking out. They hold the information to exonerate him, but they've taken this vow of silence, so they don't know whether to speak or not. And then the guy sort of like the governor goes like, too bad. The guy's ready to switch the flip. And then it cuts to like spinning newspaper as the flip goes down. Flip the switch. What am I saying? Hero executed. And you're like, that's a bleak ending. And then the camera goes down. ... almost nuns break 40-year vow of silence. That's a perfect joke.
Yeah.
Yes. But did you stay tuned for the post-credit sequence?
No, what's the post-credit sequence?
Yeah, it's Louise Lasser in a box in wherever she got shipped to, Sri Lanka or something.
Uruguay. I'm looking at this right
Uruguay.
now. Wow.
And you don't even see her. You just see the box on a mountaintop shaking and her going, "Hey, let me out of here." You know,
I like this.
This is the post-credit sequence. It doesn't really like tee us up for a sequel, so but maybe it does.
Maybe do it now. Maybe what if Raimi was like, "I'm back, Crimewave 2, baby,"
right?
And the Coens were like, "We're on board," and Reed Birney was like, "I'm hotter than ever. I'm swinging in." Bernie's
it's Crimewave 2, but it's a horror movie. It's a horror version of Crimewave.
Right. They go in the opposite direction of Evil Dead.
Yes.
This time it's brutal.
Well, I want to play the box office game mostly.
And shout out, of course, to Mark Uvari. We're going to keep shouting him out, who Blanky, who programmed boxoffice.me, the website where there is now a Wordle-style box office game that you can play along with every day. That's incredible.
Right. So I'm just very excited about this one because it is literally the box office game of my birth. This is it.
Yeah, wow.
We've never done it before. I will probably never do it again looking at the new movies this week. So
Army of Darkness was my birthday weekend, but not of the year I was born. I don't think we've done that
Right.
yet.
You haven't done that one yet. Then totally random. But here we go. Of course, Crimewave opening number 24 at the box office for $3,000. So let's not talk about that. But
it's not bad, actually.
Yeah, all considering, actually. Not
better
bad.
than any movie I've been in.
Well, same, unfortunately.
Right. We've got number one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantasy film.
Okay.
I would say it's a film. I think I'm going to triple check this. Yeah, it was a disappointment. Like because this was a pretty spectacular movie from a very big director, and it didn't actually do that well.
Is it Willow?
It's not Willow. It's the other one.
Legend?
It's Legend. It's Ridley Scott's Legend, which is not an entirely successful movie, but it is one of the fucking coolest looking movies you'll ever see.
Yes. It's just kind of incredible that's like the one time Cruise like fundamentally put his chips down in the wrong place. You know, he's obviously made worse movies, but
it's a good movie. Yeah. But it was a bad career decision for him, but on paper it wasn't at all. It was, Ridley Scott coming off of Blade Runner is making a fucking fantasy action movie. Like you're the star with a big sword. Like it should work.
But he's like weirdly bad casting for that movie, I would say. Like it doesn't play to his strengths.
He makes sense in that he's very pretty and like that's sort of the vibe. But no, he's not well cast. Tim Curry, obviously, sort of the main event of Legend. Have you seen Legend, Brendan?
Oh yeah, that was a big HBO movie for me when I was a kid.
Yeah, exactly. Good HBO movie.
I gotta clarify. It feels like him putting his chips on the wrong place only because it's maybe the only movie Tom Cruise was in post Risky Business that doesn't feel like a Tom Cruise movie, where you're just like, oh, and he's in it as an actor.
It's the year before Top Gun.
It's the one in between Risky Business and Top Gun. It's wild.
Top Gun's the thing that makes him Tom Cruise.
100%. It's in between those early Tom Cruise appearances like Risky Business and All the Right Moves and The Outsiders where you're like, oh, it's like Baby Cruise, and Top Gun where you're like Tom Cruise the movie star. Like it's the one in between.
He needed to go to the brother. He needed to go to the brother to get
he picked the wrong Scott first time.
Wrong brother.
Yeah.
So look, I like Legend, but it's number 2 in its second week, but it's only made $8 million.
Wait, I have a procedural question. Are these just for Griffin?
No, you are allowed to jump the
swing in if you want.
Okay, copy that.
Number 2 at the box office is a comedy that, again, I thought of as kind of a flop, but it wasn't. It was a very solid hit, starring one of the sort of major comedy stars of the 80s, who is gonna, in the 80s he was a comedy star. It's not Fletch. I'm calling him a comedy star of the 80s, but that's a little deceptive in that he leaps to much more of like a mainstream.
So is it a
star in
Robin
the
Williams?
90s. Not Robin Williams.
Huh. He makes a bigger leap to mainstream in the 90s.
Is it an SNL guy?
No. Although he is a famous SNL host.
Is it
Tom Hanks? Is it Splash?
It's not Splash.
Is it Tom Hanks in Bachelor
It is
Party?
Tom Hanks. It's not Bachelor Party.
Is it Joe versus the Volcano?
It's not Joe versus the Volcano. That was a flop.
That's too late.
Like that,
right.
that one actually did badly.
Huh.
Is it the dog movie?
No,
it's not Turner and Hooch.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Where is it in his career? It's not
big, is it?
Punchline.
Not Big. This
No,
is the
Big's
year
a
before Big, I believe.
Okay.
This movie is a hit, though. This movie made $37 million. A totally solid $10 million budget.
And it's not Splash.
It's not Splash. He's starring alongside a sitcom star.
Oh, is it the Shelley Long movie?
It is.
The Money Pit?
The Money Pit.
The Money Pit.
They bought this house and they got to refurbish it, guys.
If I can do a second shout out to a friend of the show, Connor Ratliff, when I was in the hospital recovering from my organ surgery, he FaceTimed me with he had ordered a promotional Money Pit greeting card that was like a baby announcement card to announce the arrival of this summer's funniest hit or whatever the fuck. Which Connor reading that was so funny to me that I was truly like I had stitches and was trying not to laugh, and I had to hang up on him, and then he sent me it like 2 weeks later. So I now have in my bathroom just taped to the wall this fucking Money Pit promotional. We're announcing a new hit comedy card, and I still didn't get the name of the movie right.
Have any of you seen The Money Pit? I have never seen The Money Pit. I know The Money Pit as an expression. I know that it's a movie about them trying to refurbish a house, but I've never seen it.
I've never seen it either. No, I saw the trailer a lot as a kid, but no, never saw it.
I know people who defend it. I know people who are very pro Money Pit.
I think it's Shelley Long, like right off of leaving Cheers, right? Like she's still in the sort of like the she's bouncing out of Cheers. People are like, oh, is Shelley Long going to be the thing, right? You know, like she hasn't quite started to fall off. And you know, Tom Hanks charming.
Well, Tom Hanks very charming. It is interesting how much Shelley Long is framed as one of those great examples of like an actor who didn't know how good they had it, and they were on this hit show and they left, and look what they got for it. But she had like a pretty good run of hits right off of Cheers. It didn't last, but she had like 3 or 4 successful movies in a row right off of Cheers.
Yeah, well,
Outrageous Fortune, that was like a successful enough movie with Bette Midler.
Yeah, no, she had a little run there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a funny movie. I watched it not all the way through. It was on TV. I just want to say there's a funny bit where Tom Hanks, he gets kind of stuck inside a rug that goes through a hole in a ceiling so that he doesn't fall through, and he gets just stuck suspended there. And then he's there for hours and hours and hours. And then later they're fighting, the couple, you know, she comes home and she's like, oh, you really want me to help you get out of this? And then he falls all the way down really far and hurts himself.
Classic. Because it's a money pit.
That sounds money pity.
No, it does. It's very
classic
money pit.
Money Pit.
All right, number 3 is not a movie I'm immediately recognizing. Nobody yell at me about that, please.
Okay.
It is it's an action thriller. It's from a famous kind of, you know, notorious 80s, 70s, 80s, you know, genre film company. So, you know, not one of the major studios.
It's a canon movie?
It's a canon film.
Okay.
And it's got, you know, a very canon film star sort of on the back end of his career, and a title that is like a famous expression.
It's not a Chuck Norris.
No.
Is it a Charles Bronson?
It's a Charles Bronson.
Okay. And the title is an expression. It's called You Win Some, You Lose Some.
Look, what can I tell you about this movie? It's from J. Lee Thompson, who I think did a Planet of the Apes. He obviously did the original.
I think he did the
Cape
last
Fear.
one. Yeah.
It's got Kathleen Wilhoit, who we all know, of course, from her work in ER and Gilmore Girls.
Okay.
It's look, Charles Bronson is playing an antisocial LAPD detective.
Can you give us a hint about the saying? What kind of saying it is?
It's not a saying exactly. It's like a phrase that means things will always turn out like the worst possible way.
Live and let live.
All right. The movie is called Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law.
Well, David, that was the hint you
Give
were
me
trying
a
to
break.
give, but doesn't fucking Interstellar, your most beloved movie of all, correct that
Yes.
interpretation of Murphy's Law, not saying the worst thing that could happen will happen, but that anything that could happen will happen?
That in Interstellar is him being nice to his daughter. Murphy's Law is anything that can go wrong will go wrong. That is the classic thing. Of course, it is only a Christopher Nolan movie where a character would be upset about being named after a phrase or whatever the fuck that storytelling device is. I love Interstellar, to be clear.
Yeah,
Murphy's Law. Look, Murphy's Law seems like a blast, I gotta say.
Yeah, looks cool.
You know, Charles Bronson, he's a hard-bitten cop. His ex-wife has become a stripper and he's mad about it. His career is going nowhere by drinking, and then he is framed by an ex-con, so he starts killing people to deal with that. I'm not gonna okay, so there you go.
Okay.
Also could have just said, like Murphy's Law was like a ska band.
You could have just said
didn't know
Murphy's
that.
Law was like
We
a
all
ska
could
band.
have said that.
We all could have said that. And actually, we failed you, Ben. I'm sorry. It is funny. I'm sorry. I'm just looking here. But Murphy's Law is one of 3 Charles Bronson thrillers that comes out in the year in between Death Wish 3 and Death Wish 4.
The man was churning them out.
And it's a Death Wish plot, is basically.
Right.
it's
Absolutely.
Death Wish.
Also, Charles Bronson is a punk band.
We all knew that, Ben.
It didn't seem like it. I didn't hear
Number-
anyone else bring it up.
Number 4 at the box office is a comedy sequel.
A comedy sequel in 1985. In this economy?
In this economy.
Okay. Was the sequel a flop? I feel like a lot of comedy sequels were at this time.
Huge success. $12 million budget, $107 million worldwide. This was a part of a hugely popular series of comedies.
Okay. And
that did fall off over the years.
Is it Police Academy 2?
It's not Police Academy 2, but it is Police Academy something.
Oh, okay.
Police Academy 3.
And what's the subtitle on that one?
Fuck. Okay, so
Citizens
I always
on
fail
Patrol.
No, Citizens on Patrol, of course, is Police Academy 4.
Okay,
I'm so sorry.
Is this their first assignment?
No, that is, of course,
2.
Police Academy 2.
So 3
So
is...
what happens in between a first assignment and being on patrol?
It's back to training?
They had to go back in
You
training.
gotta go back to training.
You gotta go back in training.
Yes, this film directed by Jerry Paris.
Never get it right. As many times as I
Jerpear?
try, I always fuck up. It's a Gare Pair pick.
Police Academy 3. Huge hit. Still, everything's still going great for Police Academy at this point.
That is one of those things where if you look at 80s or 70s comedies, it's like the first one, huge hit, $100 million. The second one, moderate hit, $20 million. Like there'd be this huge drop off. Police Academy stayed strong until like 4.
Yes, exactly.
I like that guy where he does sound effects.
Wait, there's a guy in Police Academy who does sound effects? Get
Yeah,
out
no,
of here.
David, it's crazy. So he'll be
You're
like,
thinking of a different movie. Ben, if this happened in Police Academy, I'd remember it.
no, it definitely happens. Trust me, it comes up. I'm pretty sure a lot. But David, he'll be like, it's like if you close your eyes, it's like, wow, is he going up in an elevator? But he's not.
No one could do that. No one could do that with just the human mouth and throat.
No one could do that. Not only that, Ben, if it were in the movie, I assume it would just be a cameo. Certainly, you could not build a major character across all the films whose primary characteristic is making sound effects like he's in an elevator.
It's in the movie and it's seamless.
That's not true.
Every time. Seamless every time. All right, look. Number 5 at the box office is not a film I know.
Okay.
It's
a good hint.
it's a romantic drama starring 2 pretty major stars, 2 Oscar winners.
Yeah.
Here's the more interesting thing. It's directed by the husband of the lead actress. And this guy, you'll know him, Griff, but he's not known as a director. He's more known for his his work in another, cinematic field. His craft.
You're a writer?
No.
Is this a Caleb Deschanel movie? No, I'm trying to think.
No.
Married to
Good
the
guess.
Oscar-winning star, but that type of person you're saying, right?
He was a production designer mostly. He directed movies.
Okay. So is it a Jack Fisk movie?
It's a Jack Fisk movie.
Cool. Okay, so it's
Famously,
Spacek?
worked with Sissy Spacek is in the film.
Yeah, he
worked
was
with Terrence Malick,
right?
Brian De Palma, a lot of
Okay. So
Paul
Jack
Thomas
Fisk,
Anderson later in life. Mhm.
Sissy Spacek, you don't know it. The male lead is also an Academy Award winner. Recently?
Like recently in 1986. Let's see. When did he? Yes. You know what? He hasn't won his Oscar yet. He wins an Oscar in 1988.
Is it Hoffman?
No.
Is it Hackman?
No. Great
No,
guesses,
he
but
won
no.
for.
He already won, right? For
Unforgiven.
French Connection. And he wins for
88.
Unforgiven.
Who wins in 88?
I'll tell you this: he won for Best Supporting Actor in a comic film.
It's a Klein movie?
Kevin Kline.
It's
Sissy
Klein and Spacek in a Fisk picture? A Fisker?
About two people. Oh no, I'm sorry. About a famous photographer played by Sissy Spacek who has been traveling around the world in a sailboat, I think, and then she comes home to Maryland, Brendan.
Hello.
The Maryland coast, and meets her high school sweetheart, Kevin Kline, who's married, but romance ensues. So
It's clear that none of us know what this movie is.
looks like Bonnie Bedelia plays the third wheel. That's why I'm just telling you.
Of
about
course,
What's this
Bonnie
called?
Bedelia.
Yeah.
Always.
Bonnie Bedelia.
The movie is called Violets Are Blue.
Yep. I absolutely never heard of this. in
Never
any
heard of it.
context. Yeah. It
I
does
mean,
not
I don't think it went over very well. It doesn't look like it got any Oscar nominations or any nominations
I'm
at all.
I'm a Kleiny, and I'd never heard of this film.
You call yourself, Brendan refers to himself as a mountain climber because
He is-
Oopsie daisy.
Some other films in the top 10. You got Gung Ho, the very popular Michael Keaton, Ron Howard comedy that is now unwatchable.
aged perfectly, like a fine wine. Tastes even better. You go put it back in there for another 10 years.
Japanese people are so random. Which is one of two Lowell Gans and Babaloo Mandel scripts in the top 10 because they also wrote The Money Pit. You've got Critters, New Line classic, right? Fun little horror movie.
Yep.
You've got Wise Guys. That's a De Palma movie, right?
Yes, with Piscopo.
I've never seen it. That is one of the few De Palmas I've never seen. Yes, Joe Piscopo and Danny DeVito. I mean, sounds fun. They're Wise Guys.
You know Dennis Farina's in that too. Just somewhere.
Keitel's
Keitel is in it.
Come on, give me Farina.
Dan Hedaya is in it. The wildest one is that Captain Lou Albano is in it.
Oh, nice.
Frank
Super
Vincent,
Mario
Ray
himself.
Sharkey, Patty LaPone. I'm not seeing any Farina. We could dig deeper.
Sad.
It's also
No.
written by George Gallo of fucking Midnight Run. Yes.
Wise Guys. So that's in the top. Pretty in Pink, the John Hughes film.
Mm.
The Color Purple, Steven Spielberg's. We got some Oscar leftovers here. Color Purple, Hannah and Her Sisters. The only other thing I want to point out is this was also the first week in America for Three Men and a Cradle, aka Trois Hommes et une Coffin.
Wow.
Which of course is the French movie that was remade as Three Men and a Baby the next year, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah.
Directed by Leonard Nimoy.
It is directed by Leonard Nimoy.
I'm digging into the Wise Guys cast just to definitively prove that Farina isn't in it, although it does feel like a movie Farina would be in.
Mm-hmm.
Both of Scorsese's parents are in it.
Oh,
That's fun.
cool,
That's
man.
the right. Those guys having fun.
Charles and Catherine Scorsese are in it as birthday guests.
We love it. I should see Wise Guys. That's truly like the only De Palma I've never seen. Well, you know what? I haven't seen the last one he did, the one with Nikolai Coster-Waldau or whatever. Domino. I never saw that. I should see that too.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
The thing that just came out that the minute it was released, he was like, I just own this film, which is just his vibe these days.
You haven't played Domino yet.
I haven't played Domino yet, but yeah. So that's I think a very fun box office game. A lot of weird stuff. A Police Academy, a Tom Cruise movie. It's got it all.
It's got it all. Heinze,
Sir.
thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a goddamn delight.
Is there anything specific you want to plug? I know you've been doing more music recently. You're on Lock and Key, but you also have music stuff coming up, right?
I'm just playing shows around town, and writing new songs. So, nothing to plug yet, really. New record soon, probably. I don't know.
Well, but let's see if Brendan Hines is coming to a town near you.
He's probably not.
How do you feel about Christmas music, Brendan?
Oh, that's a big question.
Okay. Christmas music I'm fine with, provided it was recorded prior to, I don't know, I'm just arbitrarily pick a date. Let's say prior to 1965.
Well, here's a question for you, Brendan. Do you have any feelings on the speed of Christmas music?
The speed, the tempo?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I like a waltz. I like a Christmas waltz.
Okay, we're getting in the right territory. I got this whole little thing going. Been putting out a slow Christmas album every year. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's Christmas music, but slow.
I love it. Like slow, like sexy.
No.
Well,
slow.
like really slow.
Throttle down, baby.
Right. Year one was just taking Christmas tracks and like chopping and screwing them. Year two was hiring people to record new tracks at an incredibly drawn out pace.
I love this.
Okay. All right. We'll talk more offline.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're the best, Brandon.
Thank you, guys. You're a river to your people. I appreciate you letting me be on this.
God, I've been waiting for someone to say that to me.
You're the coolest, and this was a blast. And thank you for helping me understand the movie Crimewave, to be honest.
I thank you for helping me understand. I've never been able to talk about it out loud before, to be honest. Like I never had anyone to talk about this movie with, and that's true.
I do just want to restate, you are an incredibly cool person, and I feel like whenever we hang out, you're trying to convince me how much of a dork you are, which
That's
you
not true.
simultaneously are. Both things are true.
Uh-huh.
But it's
I'm
a
not
surprising
cool.
package.
I'm not cool. I'm not cool.
You are, though. Despite how hard you try to not be cool,
Okay.
you are
I'm telling
very
you.
cool.
Not cool. Okay.
Thank you all for listening. Please
I'm pretty
remember...
cool too. I mean,
You're very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're very cool, Ben. Yeah.
Take us out.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. David texted this morning about the fact that subscribe is permanently banned from Apple Podcasts, and they wanted to say follow, but I'm going to keep on saying subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media helping make the show, JJ Birch, Nick Loriano for our research, Alex Barron and AJ McKeon for editing, Leigh Montgomery, the Great American Novel for our theme song, Joe Bowen, Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Go to blankcheckpod.com. for all the stuff. That's where all the stuff is now. I don't have to plug it separately.
Yep, you don't have to.
Tune in next week for Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, with special guest John Hodgman. We can say who the guest is because we banked that episode up. We got it in the can. Back-to-back tick episodes. And you can go to patreon.com/blankcheck for Blank Check special features where we're returning to the Matrix and doing Matrix commentaries. And as always, I spent the last 10 minutes Googling to see if I could find a picture of this Money Pit card so I could read it without going to my bathroom. But you just have to take my word for it. It's so fucking fun.
It's fucked up.
What's fucked up?
It's
That
fucked
I
up.
didn't do that?
That you
Yeah.
fucking failed me, you guys. Like,
I don't know ska bands, Ben. I'm not, you're barking up the wrong tree.
well, isn't that convenient for you, David?